The story begins with the guy was in the same bed with a girl and hung over her, panting heavily. Ostensibly undressing, he said that today Eliza was not trembling, but the girl behaved modestly. Kissing her neck, he asked if she was already used to it. But it was obvious that this was far from the case. The girl hugged him and unconsciously scratched her back because she was very embarrassed and she did not know what to do. While she felt a man's kisses on herself, she thought that perhaps these embrace would be the last. After all, some time ago, Eliza sat on her knees in front of the throne of the emperor, decided to make an important statement. Candid into shackles, the girl laid her hand on her chest and stated that she wears a child under the heart of a Reget. It was a delusional lie in the name of her salvation, but she stated with tears in her eyes that she would give birth to a child, so he gave her the last chance, because of which in the end they will be happy, only so that she could survive. Then the man stated that they use each other by mutual agreement to solve personal problems. They both agreed that it would be just a marriage under a contract that would not carry anything personal. However, Eliza was worried that recently there was no news about pregnancy, and this is bad. After all, this means that she did not fulfill the terms of the contract, because of which she can again be sentenced to death. Eliza made a decision, after which she stroked Reget on the head, thanking him for trying to save her. She sincerely hopes that he will be free and forget about her. But now it is very dangerous to stay here. The only thing she regrets, it must be that she could not understand her feelings for him. The next day, a doctor ran into the room, congratulating His Highness on the fact that his wife is pregnant. However, she did not have time to agree, after which she froze and stopped short. Thanks why he is without a mood. The man held a letter in his hands, which said that this was only a marriage under a contract, and this does not mean anything more. Therefore, she can leave at any time when the promised 6 months will expire. So she left, although she wears a child. And in this child his blood flows, so he crushed the letter, ordering immediately to unhook the entire territory of the possessions. With such poor health, she could not go far, so she needs to find Her Highness right now, and not to hesitate. Elizabeth Aseka, no matter how she tried to hide, her place next to him, and now her departure was a stupid decision. 700 years ago, the time when the rage of the dragon covered the continent, 5 wizards betrayed their mentor. They decided to protect people using the knowledge gained from the dragon to use them only for the good. As a result, they managed to independently defend themselves from him in the future. They managed to protect people and pacify the dragon. This country has become a beloved and revered on the whole continent, and the name of the holy morning Argan is the name of it. However, soon this glory was trampled by the hooves of the barbarian kingdom, which quickly walked south from the north. They trampled everything into small pieces, and the noble princess of this great empire, which was on the run. This was the princess and was Elizabeth, behind which there was now a pursuit. She heard the warriors urge her to grab her. The girl clearly understood that if she was caught, then she was the end, therefore, so that it does not become, she needed to run further. Every day, a whirlpool of fate lies in wait for her, which is about to dizzy, demolishing the princess from his feet. Meanwhile, in the Banella military camp, the soldiers received an urgent order to kill Sir Roderick. The killer was a woman from Argan, so it was necessary to find her and bring her here alive or dead. In the end, the place where she managed to escape turned out to be a military camp of the enemy, and one of the tents. In addition, a few hours ago, one of the men asked how she made her way into the camp without fear in her eyes. Then he squeezed her hands tightly, asking if she was a refugee from Argan, because her white hair is definitely talking about this. Smiling maliciously, the soldier became interested in whether the princess, whom they are looking for now, also beautifully escaped. Elizabeth realized that it was necessary to somehow use magic, because this is her only chance to get out of here. At that very moment, they were illuminated by a bright light, after which a sharp and deaf cotton that dumbfounded and frightened the girl. Blooded by blood, she asked herself what it was, because she did not even touch the magical circle with her finger. In any case, enemy wars died before her eyes, and if she is caught, she will not be able to leave here alive. However, there is a way that could be much better than if it were killed by the enemies hunting for her. Having fallen to his knees, her hands trembled, touching the press on her leg, and Eliza thought about committing suicide. She remembered her brother's words that with the help of circles, You can cause simple protective and attacking spells. To use a magic circle, she just needs to put a hand on him and pronounce his name. The one on the left ankle must try to use as little as possible, because it is dangerous. The girl wanted to object, but he said that even if she became a slave, better alive than dead here. Unable to stand it, Elizabeth grabbed his back, said that he did not want, and with tears in his eyes asked to go together. She admitted that she was not as excellently owned by magic as he, but she would definitely not be able to cope alone. Andre replied that he was Emperor Argan. Therefore, no matter what happened, he must defend the imperial palace. Suddenly, he enclosed her in the dome, saying that if she survives, it will mean that Argon was not amazed. While Elizabeth tried to get out, knocking on the dome, her brother asked to remember this, and not to forget his advice. In the end, he smiled, asking him to survive, and then come and equip him with a grave worthy of the emperor. His eyes filled with tears when he looked at his sister for the last time, enveloping her with a warm and loving smile. And now the girl thought that now she was the only member of the imperial family Argan, and the heiress of the throne. For the sake of Andre, she should survive at all costs, because only in this way she can fulfill his last desire. But first, you need to get out of here and go to the Regal, the ally of Argan. She is sure that they will help her there. But as soon as Eliza decided to get out of the tent, someone walked in her direction, asking the Archduke whether he was inside. The girl shuddered, after which she wanted to leave, but did not have time, since the warrior entered the tent, looking around. Looking around, Elizabeth tried to understand. Unless someone was in a tent besides her, she still has not noticed anyone. A man entered the tent. "I ask what kind of hype?" Someone shouted that a woman from Argan had killed Roderick. Elizabeth, completely stained with blood, looked at the man whom she knew was the Archduke Kristan. 3 years ago was a festive banquet in honor of Emperor Argan Adre, where many noble persons gathered. The emperor himself, putting his hand on his chest, turned to his sister with a smile, asked if she feels good. Then he touched her cheeks, offering her to just relax in his room, but Elizabeth decided to refuse. Indeed, due to the fact that he constantly hides her, and they walk all sorts of incomprehensible rumors that interfere with her a little. The girl was unhappy, asked, "Do the older brother and his twin sister be such a relationship?" She wanted to add something else, but immediately stopped short, translating a surprised look at one of the venerable guests. Andre was also surprised to say that this was Reget Kristan, the captain of the Knights of Banella, which is in the north. People whispered that, although he is the pivot brother of the emperor, he did not have a drop of imperial blood. The concubine of the emperor's past is not clear from whom she gave birth to, but he made a great contribution and became the Archduke. There was a strange feeling, because of all the conversations and rumors, that the brother had an incomprehensible origin. However, the Archduke wanted to prove his significance to everyone, arranging bloody massacres with his enemies. Everyone calls him the god of war or the guard dog of the emperor, but this does not mean that he is a cruel person. Be that as it may, with confidence, we can say that he is one who does not want to have anything in common with them. And now Eliza thought that Viti had her at the banquet that day. She would immediately guess that she was Princess Argane. At that very moment, they both turned around when they heard that someone was carrying an urgent report of His Highness. The girl's heart stunned when she realized that it was all over, and in the end, she would die like this, surrounded by the enemy. Having closed her eyes and cries, she mentally told her brother that she would soon join him in the next world. Suddenly, Reget ordered her to leave here, but the girl could not believe her ears, because of which she asked. Elizabeth looked at the man in surprise, not understanding why he decided to let her go and let him escape. Suddenly, he knelt down, greeting Her Highness Princess Argan, thereby shocking her. Getting slightly, he asked if she could forgive him for this unpleasant situation. A couple of minutes later, the Reget began to wet a rag, saying that it is not good, that it has such clothes, everything is in the blood. Then he turned around, asked if he could touch her body, but she did not fully understand what he had in mind. Then she lowered her head, noting that her clothes and skin was covered with the blood of a recently killed soldier. Then she realized that something clearly came out of her body. Only how? Because she did not use the magic circle. While Eliza was thinking about this, her voice of the Archduke distracted her, who was still standing in front of her with a wet rag. In embarrassed look, The girl replied that she was giving him permission because she herself did not want to walk blooded. The man apologized, after which he began to wipe her face and neck, those places on which spray of blood fell. Taking care of the touch, she thought that this was not the attitude that should be directed towards the enemy. At that very moment, the girl decided that perhaps she would be able to leave here alive if the Archduke helped. After a couple of minutes, the man said that he finished. Elizabeth thanked him for such invaluable help. Then the Archduke ordered Sir Reuben to go in. He immediately obeyed, and sadness immediately appeared on Elizabeth's face. The knight in the armor, entering the tent, immediately asked displeasedly what he was busy here all this time. But when he drew attention to the girl in the company of the captain, his seriousness immediately gave way to surprise. Reuben, in complete shock, pointed a finger at the woman, saying loudly that it was she who killed Sir Roderick. Reget, with a calm face, asked to show his respect for Her Highness the Princess. He immediately stopped. The captain explained that the last member of the imperial family Argan. Reuben immediately froze in a stupor. At that very moment, the man looked at her, saying that during her last path, he should show courtesy. Half an hour later, Elizabeth sat on the bed, glancing at the plates with the food that was provided to her. She tried to understand how she was after such words. If they were going to kill her, they could do it right away. She shuddered, hearing that someone asked that this woman was true the last member of the imperial family Argan. The guard outside asked that this is the twin princess that the emperor hid, but then they should kill her. He was replied that His Highness sent the postal pigeon to the emperor to find out about further actions, and he needs to follow the words, because you can't rudely handle the members of the imperial family Argan. He replied that everyone was talking about Argan, but they themselves forget that it was the empire that fell from their hand. Since the emperor is dead, the Argan is practically destroyed, but they cannot be underestimated because there are myths about Argan. These were myths that they protected the continent from the dragon, thereby giving freedom to all the inhabitants of the empire. At that time, Eliza thought that Andre was the only family for her and her steel shield. Now he is not, and those last words became like a will for her, and in the end she survived alone, but it is not known whether for a long time. Now there was no time to cry, and you need to pull yourself together in order to reason sensibly and soberly, despite the situation. First of all, it is necessary to find information about Banella. Perhaps someone from here will be able to save her life. The guards said that it would be possible to return soon, but on the return of the Archduke will be very difficult. When asked why, they answered him that His Majesty was finding fault with the Archduke at a meeting, no matter what happened. He just wants a healthy child to be born as soon as possible, because of which he will receive the right to inherit. It would be very disappointing if such a bloodline sunk into oblivion, but in any case, he is an unusual person. Suddenly, Eliza shuddered, hearing the question if at least one woman who could give birth from a semi-prankoon. The half-pranakons that she read in books were young creatures that could not describe people. Weak intellects are low social skills. They are the ability to control the madness of the dragon, which flows through the veins. In addition, they have simply a monstrous appearance, which is why it seems dangerous for ordinary people. Elizabeth could not believe that the Reget is really a semi-gorgon, since it was not like it. 5 days later, the night reigned over a military camp, and there was silence and tranquility everywhere, not hinting at anything. That evening, the Reget entered Eliza, welcoming the princess, and next to him was a girl with a tray in her hands. Elizabeth understood everything when she noticed the objects brought for suicide princess of the fallen empire. Sitting in bed, she asked if such manners should be observed, because everything could be solved much easier. The Archduke replied that the emperor had come from His Majesty, and now he decided to read it. The emperor decided to give the last chance to Princess Argan independently end his life. Eliza thought whether to end her with honor or wait for what would be brought to the capital and beheaded to everyone. A man with an indifferent look invited her to choose, but the girl was silent and was in no hurry to give an answer. The ability to choose death itself is reverence. Permission to commit suicide is the most luxurious death. Such a proposal can only receive a family member of the defeated empire and keep his face in front of his enemy. However, she needs to survive in some way, but as under such circumstances she can retain her face. Reget concluded that such a message of the emperor so they should do everything as he said. Eliza, looking at the Archduke, thought that this man was the most powerful high-ranking in this camp, and in his native state he is called to acquire a successor, because he inherited the blood of the dragon. Then the girl got out of bed, asked if she did not commit suicide here, and whether they would take her to Banella. The man replied that if she did not do this, then he would do so, because His Majesty ordered her to bring her. For some time, Elizabeth thought, after which she looked at the dagger lying on the tray and reached for him. She decided to clarify whether she would definitely be brought intact and safety, to which she received an affirmative answer. It was unclear whether this rope is strong or rotten. One can only hope that the Emperor is a principled person. Eliza hoped that he could restrain his word, so she firmly stated that she would not commit suicide. If she selects this option, she understands that he will need to take her to the capital intact. Suddenly, she waved a dagger, after which she pierced her shoulder, thereby dumbfounding the Reget. Bleeding, the girl smiled, saying that he must definitely take her to Banella, no matter what happened. After these words, it began to get dark in her eyes, and the princess herself began to lose consciousness while Reget called her. Elizabeth firmly decided that so that she did not have to do and endure, she would survive, despite all the troubles. After all, she is the last member of the imperial family of Argan, who should fulfill the promise to his own brother. An hour later, the man was sitting near the bed of Eliza, who was lying unconscious after it hit himself with a knife. Looking at her, he asked himself why, every time he wanted to leave, she causes herself a meaningless pain. The princess does not intend to die a noble death, but that if she is just not going to die, perhaps she wants to lure him to her side so that he helps her, risking her reputation and title. Who would have thought that she would use the imperial order and force him to take her to the capital? He remembered how people whispered on one of the banquets about the fact that this girl is a princess, about whom rumors go. When everyone first saw her, they realized why the emperor carefully hid her from human eyes. After all, she is very beautiful, and at that moment, the Reget also realized this, and on his face it was clearly written. While he was thinking about this, the question was heard from the awakened girl, unless he wants to tell her anything. Looking up, the Archduke noticed that Elizabeth completely became conscious and raised herself, languidly looking at him. The girl turned to him again, with a suspicious look, said that he knew that she was not sleeping. After that, she decided to clarify if this was so, but the man said nothing, deciding to withstand a short pause. Eliza thought to her that he always seeks to avoid any conversations with her. However, the girl so differently wanted to start a dialogue with him, so she had to improvise and not be silent. Then she asked if she needed to leave another trace of a knife on her body so that he would talk to her. Reget replied that she should know how to take care of herself. She replied that when she arrives in Banella, she would be killed. Then the man decided to take her hand, but Elizabeth reacted faster, and the first grabbed his hand. Standing her fingers, she raised her head. Out of a serious tone, she asked if he was married. The Archduke was surprised at this issue. However, he did not answer immediately, trying to understand why she needed this information. He replied that he was single, and the girl suggested that many would like to marry him, but he was still not married. Reget replied that she did not know if she knew, but various rumors throughout the continent spread about him. He does not know if his parent could give his precious daughter to marry a man who is not even a man. After all, he is the one in whom the blood of the dragon flows. Not only is he not a person, it's still hard for him to control himself. Having inherited the madness of the dragon, he can restrain himself only with the help of frequent periodic killings. This is a damned race. But the girl calmly said that often rumors are very exaggerated and unreliable. She heard that Emperor Banella wanted him to have an heir, and therefore the knight must execute the order. Reget Princess that he does not have such a hobby, to kill a woman in order to see his heir. He does not even want to see blood on the bed, as this does not bring him joy. And Eliza flinched from these words. The man felt the trembling of her hands, mentally asking why she was so frightened, and did not let go of her hand. Suddenly, she said that for an ordinary woman, it would be very dangerous, but other outcomes are possible. The ancestor of Argan was a student of the dragon, but whether he knows that the power of wizards flows in the Argan family, the Archduke decided to ask if she was a sorceress. Elizabeth replied that yes and no. She explained that there were a lot of myths about the dragons that he had to hear about the imperial family. Reget understood that we were talking about dragons, dragon students, and semi-pranks, and felt what she was leading to. Somehow this woman has something in common with him, but at the same time is the exact opposite. She must think that she can get sympathy or pity, finding common features with him. However, the question remained why she was, because the fate of this girl was already a foregone conclusion from the emperor. After all, she was already proposed to carry out the most worthy death that is appropriate for her nobility. However, why did she decide to follow such a difficult path, trying to survive and get out of here? Suddenly, the Archduke said that he would not help her, because of which Eliza was scared, and her heart pounded frantically. He also added that he even has no intention of helping her so that she would not speak or invent. Therefore, he politely asked not to dare to allow, and thoughts about some kind of stupidity during its transportation. Eliza asked if she had the same if she kneels before him, but he considered it absurd. But even if she will be a elbow and beg, he will simply experience an even stronger confusion than now. He does not want her to kneel, but calmly reacts to the fact that she will commit suicide before his eyes. Eliza said that she understood everything, but asked him to be next to her until this whole procession was completed. Looking into his eyes, she with hope asked not to leave here even for a minute, so that she was calmer. The Archduke nodded, agreeing, because it was the order of the princess, which he was able to fulfill. Elizabeth smiled, after which she apologized for worrying him, because he probably has a lot of his business. But, as he said, she can die at any moment, so it is important for her to be near this moment. After that, the girl kissed his hand, asking, "Is it not the youngest that he can do now?" Closer to the night, the man still sat near her bed, waiting for the princess to fall asleep, and he began to fall asleep. The sudden Elizabeth began to turn in a dream, naming the name of her brother, who was with her in difficult times. At that very moment, the girl saw a silhouette that turned into her good André, whom she immediately recognized. Gently touching his cheek, she said that if she had become an empress, she would have died, and he would live and could help to make the Argon does not fall, and continue to be a prosperous empire. Because he is one of those who achieve everything, in spite of everything, putting impossible efforts to this. The guy took her hand, answering his sister that no one without her, since they were always together, and went hand in hand. Then he smiled, asking her to listen carefully to what he would say now, because it is very important. Reflected in her eyes, André said that she was much more surprising and stronger than he thinks, and she should know that, because she is the great Princess Argan, who deserves universal reverence and respect for subjects. Eliza thought that if he knew what she had a plan now, he would despise her for the rest of her life. With tears in her eyes, she said that she would definitely take care of his tombstone, make him, and then leave. After that, the girl closed her eyes, falling asleep tightly, not talking for the rest of the night, sniffing peacefully. After 5 minutes, the Rajate said that he had heard about her illness, but did not think that everything was so sad. Suddenly, the girl began to turn in a dream, saying that she was cold, after which she sweated and began to breathe heavily. Having held his hand, the man thought that, one way or another, in the fluctuations of emotions, there is always his own reason. Despite the fact that the princess first saw the princess 3 years ago, she still remained in her head as a memory, that she is a precious stone, to which he would never dare to touch, as if he did not want. It seems that they met in the most terrible period of his life, which made this situation the most rainbow. A woman who shone so much as if the sun itself was now next to him and slept peacefully. Perhaps these emotions are only nostalgia for those days when they so unexpectedly collided with each other. The Archduke immediately touched her cheek, felt that the whole body was on, and she had a heat. When he tried to undress her a little, Elizabeth woke up, saying that he was one of those who did not understand anything. Reget immediately removed his hand, asking if she woke up because of him, because it turns out that he prevented her from bed. Suddenly, Elizabeth pulled him to her, immediately blushing, but she had to tell him something important. Breathing heavily, she said that when they come to the capital, he should not be very angry with her for it. He must assume that this is her last attempt to get out of the paws of fate that she was destined. Looking her eyes, Reget replied that he did not understand what she had in mind, so he had nothing to get angry with her. Eliza replied that he could consider her crazy, but let her think what? She can have value. After these words, the girl lost consciousness and fell asleep on his chest, leaving the Archduke in complete confusion. The time spent with the princess flew quickly, and one day, at the dawn, the camp was assembled and ready to leave. Thus began a journey to Banella, which will last quite a long time, which will give time for thought. But more precisely, it was a journey to the faithful death of Elizabeth, which should be avoided at any cost. Closer to the night, they planned to break the camp to spend the night, and let the horses take a break from the road. Reget politely said that he would prepare her a place to relax, so she should wait a bit here. Eliza awkwardly looked away, answering that she really doesn't care where to relax, since she was already used to it. The man retorted this by the fact that, if her temperature rises again, their trip would have to be postponed. The girl sadly said that because of her, the planned all the time was postponed. He replied that this was not so. Elizabeth looked inquiringly at him, without believing his words. The thing just said the very opposite. At that very moment, she looked at the soldiers who stared at her, but there was a feeling that everything was avoided. At first, she decided that this was due to the fact that she looked dirty, after which she began to inspect herself. Suddenly, she remembered that on the way they saw a lake. Now it was like salvation from other people's eyes. Suddenly, Reget overtook her, asking what happened, and why she decided to leave the camp on her own. Elizabeth replied that it seemed to her that there was a lake in the forest, so she thought that perhaps she could wash herself there. Suddenly, the man replied that he would spend her, and at the same moment the dumbfounded looks of the soldiers rushed at him. The girl clarified whether he was going to take her to where she would wash her. He answered in the affirmative. At first she wanted to refuse, because she thought that he was doing this out of experiences that she was going to execute her. Suddenly, Elizabeth fell silent and froze, thinking that perhaps this is a good chance and a plan to save life. It would be better if as many people as possible saw them together, so that rumors began to spread. The girl suddenly changed her decision, and with a confident look answered that then they would go together. After 10 minutes, they were near the lake. The man touched the water, saying that she was very cold here. The Archduke did not forget to warn her, so that she would be extremely attentive, so that the water would not fall on her wound. Eliza began to slowly unfasten the shirt, thinking that I needed to try something to check. Reget Kristan has not changed a lot since she first met him, but you need to make sure. She remembered the heat emanating from the strong body that held her that day. She still remembers this. When the man suddenly turned his head, he saw a practically naked and embarrassed girl. Reget turned to her, because of which Elizabeth shuddered and blushed, not expecting him to speak with her so quickly. Then he went to her, pulling her shirt back, and with a calm look, saying that the wind was still cold. Elizabeth looked away, clarifying that she wants to wash the whole body, because it seems to her that she is too dirty. The Archduke fastened her shirt, answering that not even 3 days had passed since her temperature slept. Then he leaned over and politely asked the princess not to subject him to such tests. After all, he already made it clear that he could not help her, so you cannot even try to do something. The girl immediately moved away from him, looking down with despondency, realizing that all her attempts to survive are in vain. None other than Princess Argan appeared before the commander-in-chief of the enemy state in an obscene form. She still shows herself miserable. This person still remains an honest and noble knight. Reget said that there is moss on the stones, so there is slippery, and tomorrow they will arrive in the village where there is a hotel. She needs to wait one day, because to transfer plans for her discretion will be hard in their situation. But he wanted to add something else. But Elizabeth interrupted him, saying that he would only do his hands and legs. The man did not say anything else, letting the lady to the water. There, in turn, he was awkwardly looking back in his direction. She did not know whether such a noble person could forgive her for what she was going to do in Banella. Now, the mid-March, a month and a half has passed after the Knights of Banella were captured. And now, finally, they arrived in the Banella Empire, located in the northwest of the continent, as planned. From afar, it looked beautiful. You could stand here for hours and watch the incredible beauty of the city. When they entered the city, an assistant ran up to the Archduke, who was clearly concerned about something. The worried guy did not know where to start, while the Reget asked him to calm down and report everything. The soldier explained that Yanok Seekit arrived, the fourth prince of the kingdom. He did not know that they would arrive in the castle. At that very moment, a man came up to them, asking a menacing voice whether he was the Archduke Kristan. The red-haired Yanok held out his hand with a smile and asked how he managed to catch Princess Argan. Then he looked at the girl who trembled and stood with his back, and he asked if she was standing. The girl clearly knew that the empire was the angle of Argan, and it was they who attacked their house then. Reget made his head and saw the trembling Elizabeth, who was afraid to meet with Yanok. Yanok said that he had done the whole way to the imperial castle in order to see its beautiful face. But it so happened that she eventually escaped from there, because of which they were left with nothing. But now they met again. They say that this feminine beauty needs to be seen at least once before his death. It is a pity that he could not succeed. Therefore, he turned to his brother, the owner of Banella. It was at his request that the emperor sent the letter, and he asked that she would come here whole, and not a single hair fell from her head during transportation here. And since the Archduke himself grabbed her for him, he will be very happy to accept this gift right now from hand to hand. Then he held out his hand to grab Elizabeth, but the girl did nothing to pull away. She mentally asked to touch her, because if he touches her, something terrible could happen. Then the magic circle will react, and it will die. But at the same second, Janak was stopped and asked to move away. Before Eliza, a man immediately stood up, who closed her with his body, hinting that it was impossible to touch her. When asked what he was doing, Reget replied that he received an order to bring the princess, but there was no order to transfer her. They will need permission from His Majesty Emperor so that they can take the prisoners captured on the battlefield. While the Emperor does not order him to give the princess, the prisoner will belong to Banella, and more specifically to him. After that, the man held out his hand to the princess, who did not expect such an act from his invader. Having acquired her by the shoulder, the Archduke said that they could go, since they do not need to report to this man. Looking after them, Yanok gazed his teeth and trembled, saying that they would still look at who owes what and to whom. First of all, Reget came to Emperor Neuer Erdrich, who said with a smile that he had tried well. Why did he begin to be interested in whether the princess rebelled? This duke replied that there was nothing like that. Neuer said that since we were talking about the noble family of Argan, he thought that she had long committed suicide. If she came here, it seems that she has some kind of hidden motive that she wants to use. Reget also knew about this, but did not dare to voice his guesses to the emperor, so as not to substitute her. He remembered how Eliza, taking his hand, asked him to be next to her, and not even leave for a minute. Then she whispered in his ear that when they would come to the capital, he should not be very angry with her and her words. The emperor stated that the corner demanded that they give the princess. Perhaps he himself wants to cut her throat. Reget was surprised, while Neuer added that, after that, they want to make a scarecrow from it for a fun. Be that as it may, she is the last person from the imperial family, so they want to hang her in the square. After that, they want to transfer the body to the question, when this happens. The emperor replied that exactly 5 days later. The Archduke thought that there was practically no time. He did not know that he was going to come up with Eliza to avoid execution. Neuer said something young emperor such a proud could survive and preserve the Argan state. Then he began to reason, so that he would do in his place, when he suddenly looked at the sown face of Reget. The emperor decided to turn to him, ask why he is distracted by other thoughts, being in front of him. The Archduke, sitting on his knee, replied that he hadn't thought about anything, and now he only listened carefully to his speech. Neuer said that his brother is a very honest person. Therefore, if he tries to lie, it is very noticeable to him. However, Reget still continued to say that he did not understand what he was talking about here. The emperor called him a stubborn. Suddenly, Neuer thought sharply, asking if nothing happened to the princess during their trip. The Archduke first did not answer, after which he stated that nothing had happened, but he had to lie. The emperor thought for several seconds about his short answer, but still decided to believe his commander-in-chief. Then, he asked him to go and relax today. Even if he is a dragon, he still needs a vacation, like everyone else. The man was about to leave. The emperor stopped him, remembering that he wanted to say something else about him. He asked to get acquainted with the bride in his office, so as not to force him to wait. Then Neuer frowned, asking not to forget why he put him in a high position. When they were younger, Neuer said that the dragon with human qualities has good heredity. They cannot miss such a perspective, so they must train him to make him a winner. Then he asked the little Reget that he was holding a coin in his hands, whether he would take his hand right now. And now the Reget replied that even if you get married, it will still be difficult to see the heir because of the problematic genus. Even if a woman can stand his seed, she will die before he gives birth, and he does not want to see this. The emperor said that he would send him strong women, so it will be necessary to at least try to do this. It was his mother who gave birth to him. This is precisely what the proof is that everything is possible, despite rumors. At that very moment, the Archduke rose and stated that he would go to rest. Such behavior outraged the emperor. Neuer said after him that if he doesn't want to marry, then let him grow old and die alone. Walking along the corridor, the man thought about her brother's words that his mother coped when she could give birth to him. It was a woman who could not be born, despite the long birth that looked just terrible. And also the monster, which was born as a result of the fact that with his own hands he broke her stomach. So all the half-pranks are born, and so all women die, without exception, who gave birth to semi-pranks. That is why he is stubborn, because he simply does not want to become a witness to this, and that was what annoyed him. Then he decided that it was better to return to the mouth until this whole situation completely filled his mind. But first, you need to go there at least once to visit the captive and find out if everything is in order with her. However, the man did not know what to do when they met, because he finally refused her any help. Meanwhile, Elizabeth sat in a dungeon, and her hands were chained in shackles attached to the wall with a chain. She sadly remembered how the Reget helped her a little before imprisoning the girl in custody. Having removed the handcuffs from her, the man carefully examined the gusts on his wrist, which he really did not like. Then he decided to wrap them with a cloth so that in the future she would not be so painful, and the wounds heal many times faster. And now, looking at her hands, Eliza remembered his words that the load on her wrists would decrease. She concluded that this is a man who is unrealistic to understand, because he does everything opposite to what he says. Suddenly, horror appeared on her face, because of which she shuddered when she heard a familiar voice hailing her. A man who entered the prison said that Emperor Argan also had a beautiful face, like her. However, it could not be compared with her beauty. Yanok smiled angrily while he said all this to the girl. Elizabeth immediately recognized him, and the man replied that this was a great honor, that she could remember his name. Then he decided to ask if this was true, but the girl did not understand what he was talking about and decided to ask again. Yanok asked not to build a fool out of himself because he knows that the emperor poured magic into it before his death. Elizabeth was dumbfounded by such a statement, but they could immediately believe that the brother had poured magic into it. Most likely, he has in mind a magic circle, but only he and Andre can see him. But Yanok found out about it. Suddenly, Yankee took the key, saying with a smile that he needed to check it before she died. He was very interested in whether she had magical abilities that would be very useful to him. When the man opened the doors, extended his hand to her, Elizabeth thought that something needed to be done urgently. Suddenly, a man who had threatened her before, unconscious, fell to the ground, stunned by a rather strong blow. As this girl raised her head, she noticed a Reget, who decided to visit her very in time, and thereby helped. However, she was surprised at his visit, because so far I have not understood the true intentions of this man. He was worried about the prisoner, who would soon be hanged, and did not let him damage his wrists, as if it would change something. In addition, he just saved him from Barbar, so that he did nothing with her, although he could calmly not come. She did not know if he did it because of the emperor's instructions, or was it because of a long night to help the weak. But whatever it was, Elizabeth politely thanked him, because of which the man froze in surprise. At that very moment, she mentally apologized to him, thinking that she would never let him go and keep him. A few days later, the day of Elizabeth's execution came. The weather on this day was simply excellent and warm. Reuben ran to the Archduke, saying that it remained to load the award that His Majesty passed him. The Reget agreed with a calm look, answering that they would leave immediately as the whole baggage would be loaded. The assistant, with a surprised look, asked if he wanted to go to the square. Hearing a response question why, he rubs his head, specified that the execution of the princess will take place today, now noon, which means that everything will begin soon. In the morning, a huge crowd of people has already gathered in the square, for which this execution is only a funny performance. After all, the most beautiful women of Grandel will take place, and this is a great topic for discussion among onlookers. Some expect a miracle, for example, the magical disappearance of the princess. But the Reget could no longer listen to it. He asked to stop carrying all nonsense and checking if they had forgotten something, because he did not plan to return. The dumbfounded Reuben asked if he was not going to go there, because he expected the Archduke to remain. The guy was surprised to explain that he accompanied her for almost 2 months, and all this time was next to her. He also thought that they had very close, intimate, and secret relations, about which almost the entire camp knew. The commander-in-chief asked not to waste time in vain and prepare for departure in the next hour. Seeing the calm face of the Archduke, Reuben mentally asked, was there really nothing between them? However, the Reget froze, after which he looked at the tower with the clock, where the bell rang, saying that it was already noon. With a slight sadness, Reget ordered to advance, but at that very moment he noticed a woman fled in their direction. The breathless maid loudly told His Highness that he needed to immediately come to the Emperor. She clarified that this applies to Princess Argan. When the man heard about this, his eyes widened in surprise. A little earlier, Neuer, looking at Elizabeth, said that he heard that she wanted to tell him something at the end. For a while, the girl was silent, as she tried to choose the words that she would have managed to avoid death. She is already too far from worthy death, although the inhabitants of Argan loved the princess without even seeing her face, and she could not achieve anything in order to somehow justify their expectations, because of which she was in this situation. As a result, the princess turned away from everyone and ran away, trying to escape alone, but she was simply obliged to survive. She must equip the grave for her brother, who died alone, as well as reassure the spirit of the people of Argan. Not hearing any answer, the emperor hurried her, because at that time she had to be executed. In recent months, this moment has imagined this moment for hundreds of times, but in reality, everything turned out to be worse. Then she gathered her will into a fist, after which she stated with a confident look that she was under the heart of the child of the Reget. The emperor could not believe his ears, because of which strong surprise involuntarily appeared on his face. He asked if he had just heard, or she said that she was conceiving a child from the Archduke himself. Sitting on his knees, Elizabeth replied that he heard everything correctly. That was what she wanted to tell him. Neuer could not believe that Reget spent the night with a woman on the battlefield, which did not look like him very much. However, looking at the awkward expression of the princess's face, perhaps this was true, although it was amazing. Then the emperor shuddered when he realized what situation he was in, because of which he was supposed to change his plans, after which he jerked, saying that he did not know if she had heard that the Erzduke Kristan is a midfield, and is she in the know that a person is not able to carry a semi-prakan in himself. In response, the girl shook her head. Then he asked how then she found out that she had a child, and whether there was any good evidence. Elizabeth replied that her twin brother was a wizard. She checked her body condition with magic. It is not as capable as a brother, but it can use a small amount of magic to evaluate the body. Touching upon a magic circle, she said that she could understand if something is clearly wrong with her body. When the girl's hand shone, Neuer asked, wasn't this a reason to temporarily avoid the death penalty that she was destined? Elizabeth dutifully closed her eyes and laid her hand on her chest, and answering that it was already solving His Majesty. However, the emperor said in a serious tone that this was not so, and the final decision would be behind the Archduke. After that, there was a creak of the door into which the Reget entered, which dumbfounded the girl who did not expect him. While the man was going towards the throne, Neuer asked him with interest if the princess told the truth about pregnancy. She silently went to Eliza, looking carefully at her, while the emperor demanded an answer from him. The Archduke politely asked to let him talk with the princess alone to discuss this. Neuer was indignant, loudly slapping his hands through the armrests, asking, is it really necessary now? At this time, the Reget bowed, answering that he would take this consent. Such insolent behavior was surprised by Elizabeth. The emperor wanted to shout something after them, but they had already left, after which he turned to Sir Reuben, which was nearby. He ordered him in detail to report what happened on the way to the capital between the princess and the Archduke. He could not miss the slightest, and tell everything so that he could figure out this difficult situation. When the Reget and Eliza moved a certain distance from the castle, the man loudly asked what she was planning. Having lowered her head, the girl asked to accept an apology, but the man replied that he did not need them. Then he repeated the question of why she lied, because she pulled him into this lie, which he learned only now. Elizabeth replied that he himself knew the reason, and having heard this, the Archduke shuddered, realizing that it was true. The girl added that she did not want to die. She needed to do something in order to survive, so she lied. Reget replied that she had to solve everything on his own, without drawing him, and there should be a more reasonable way. Eliza said that she could not choose another path, since this way out was the only thing that did not allow her to die. Then she asked with tears in her eyes that if she had chosen a different path, whether he would allow her to do it. The man replied that, be that as it may, if he knew that she was planning something, he would have thought about some option. However, the girl asked him not to lie, because she knew that he would have pretended to have heard nothing at all. He would simply ignore her, but more than once he told her that he was not going to help in anything. He assumed that she was already executed today in the square, even despite the little concern that he showed. Although it was a simple pity, he was still not going to save her, even having spent so much time with her. Emperor Banella desperately wants the heir to be born, so such a lie is necessary. Suddenly, Elizabeth said that therefore she would give birth to a child, and such a statement was dumbfounded by the Archduke. The girl strictly asked the man to use her to try to fulfill the long-awaited dream of the emperor. After all, he is very annoyed by the idea that he was constantly forced to conceive him from everywhere. Therefore, for him, such an opportunity is also not bad, and he should think about it and solve his problem in addition. The girl shuddered when she heard the question, whether she would give birth to a child to him. The Reget from shock even asked her. The man somehow smiled strangely, said that she had just said that she wanted to die with a terrible death. But does she understand why? Despite the fact that His Majesty is so longing a child, he is still not. If she knew everything from the very beginning, would not make such an offer. But now it's too late. Because she chose this path only for the sake of surviving, at that very moment he grabbed her by the wrist. Suddenly, he thought that even if he pressed a little on him, you can simply break all the bones. Then, the Archduke said that in her eyes, he looks like someone's arrogant, but the situation is much more complicated. Or maybe he does not understand something, because he does not have time to process everything that the girl says or thinks. Every time she sees him, she knows what he thinks about, and this fact is almost impossible to hide from her. But for some reason, every time on his face, he does not understand anything and tries to avoid responsibility. She apologized for stifling his honor, but the man repeated that he could not help her with anything. However, there was not a word that he would interfere with her to try to save his life. She must decide herself. In her place, he would simply strictly ask the emperor not to execute her in return for everything she can give. For example, some secrets of Argon, which are known only to her, treasures or myths that are associated with dragons. Eliza replied that she could sell herself and her dignity, but not the country that her brother and people protected. They put it on the end of their lives, so he does not dare to go to this exclusively for their salvation. Suddenly, the man asked if she had thought that noble suicide would be more worthy of the empire. Having lowered her head, Elizabeth thought that he believes that she had to die a beautiful death from the very beginning. And the words of this man are not false. Even if she tried to fight, she could still not change anything. Even if she returned to Argon, she still can't restore the empire. But there was hope. After all, Andre finally told her that if she survives, it will mean that Argon was not affected. After that, Elizabeth every day asked the same question as she could die after such words. Then she looked up, saying that she was exactly different from ordinary women, so she will try to endure the child. After all, although she is not as owned by magic as a brother, she can use some facilitating spells. Reget asked that if she could use magic, then why was it so easily surrendered to be taken? In addition, he has no desire to understand a woman who cannot really worry about his body. Having bowed, the man said that he would give her time again to think about everything, adding that they would see him tomorrow. Suddenly, he froze when Elizabeth replied that she did not need time to think, since she had already decided everything. She made a specific proposal, so the decision will only be followed by take it or refuse it. Without answering anything, the Archduke headed back to the palace in order to personally talk with the Emperor again. When he returned, Neuer was waiting for him in his place, with trepidation, interested in the results of the conversation with Eliza. He was only interested in one question, whether he spent the night with the princess, because of which she became pregnant. At first, Reget wanted to answer that this was not, after which he sighed heavily and fell silent, deciding not to rush. He thought about whether it was necessary to say that they shared one bed, but only because Eliza was unwell. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by the Emperor, who laughed and stated that it was still and he slept with her. Reget wanted to make excuses, but Neuer said that he had just not hesitated for 5 seconds, which means that there was something. He also heard that they were constantly together all the way, although it seemed to him that he was an insensitive block. Realizing what happened here, the Archduke turned to Reuben, asking that he managed to tell His Majesty. The guy turned his head guiltily, answering that he had reported only what he saw and heard with his own eyes. They spent time together during the day and night for a month and a half, so he said everything as it was. Neuer ordered not to dare to lie to the Emperor, because he knows that he went to prison to the princess on the eve. He wanted to check the woman who hates his child. The Reget asked why he was called in this case. The Emperor replied that he already knew the exact answer when he opened the door and led the princess out of here, but there was a question. Therefore, he directed the imperial doctor to Princess Argan to say exactly whether she was pregnant. They will know this for sure only after examining the doctor, and until that time, he has all the reasons to doubt. The sudden Emperor asked if he was sure that this child was him. Reget asked what he had in mind. Neuer replied that the princess said that she seduced him. He was interested in when she had time, and whether it was true. After all, she was sharpened in the castle by her brother all the time. Does she know how to seduce men? In addition, there were rumors on Argan that the twins were more than just a brother and sister, which leads to some thoughts. Perhaps the Emperor, before his death, and his sister managed to conceive a child, and now she uses it. Suddenly, the Archduke abruptly interrupted him, in a severe tone, asking if he delays the name of Princess Argan. Neuer said that even if the princess lied to him, he does not think that he would tell her anything, not to slander. If she dared to lie, he will not let her die so easily. It will be better if he gives her a whole prince, and then the Gemini will meet again, only in the other world, in which case the problem will be resolved. We will lower his head. Reget said that he did not know how she lived in Argan before, but he had another opinion. According to his personal experience, the princess is clearly not one of those who are engaged in indecent and profligacy, especially with his brother. And judging by her state of health now, she is not just given everyday life, not to mention the rest. The Emperor decided to go to the end, ask if he wanted to say that the princess really bare his child. At that very moment, the Archduke confidently said that the princess had no other man. After the audience, the Reget went along the corridor, thinking about the dialogue with the Emperor and what he should do next. He thought that a person who had the highest status was at the most vivid embodiment of virtue, a woman who wanted to touch at least once in her life and endlessly look into her innocent eyes. She screamed that she did not want to die, and such stupid recklessness shocked him literally to the core. At that very moment, he asked Reuben where Princess Argan is now located. The subordinate first did not understand the question. He said in an uncertain tone that, most likely, she was in the western part along with the doctor to undergo an examination. The Archduke did not answer and turned sharply, heading in the direction where his subordinate pointed out. Reuben tried several times to hail him, but to no avail, since the man was mired in his thoughts about Eliza. Walking forward, the commander-in-chief decided that, in the end, he would do what she wanted from him initially. Meanwhile, Elizabeth was lying in the room, almost falling asleep, while the doctor arrived for her for examination. An elderly woman said that the pulse is too weak, so difficult to make her more accurate diagnosis. It is too exhausted, so the doctor finds it difficult to say something for sure, and it makes no sense to say approximately. Elizabeth replied that this is a feature of her body, but she does not affect her ordinary life. It was checked. Then the doctor said that she would take a blood sample from her, deciding that he could make a more accurate diagnosis. Putting her head on the pillow, The girl thought that since she took blood from her, and tomorrow everyone would know that she lied. This meant only that she had only 1 day left, and then they would either kill her or do something worse. When the night fell, a man entered the room, who put his hand on her forehead to check the temperature. Suddenly waking up, Eliza asked why he came to her in a dream, since he decided to help me. Then she added that he was right. She tried to survive with all her might when she had to disappear for a long time. When everything is opened, then she really will commit suicide, but so far she wants to enjoy life a little more. When Elizabeth opened her eyes again, the maid next to her gladly noticed that Her Highness woke up. The girl was afraid of the sudden appearance of an outsider, so she immediately asked who she was. The maid introduced herself to the Avesta, saying that from now on she would be her personal servant, and she could turn to her. Such a layout of events was very surprised by the princess, because why one who will die soon to give a personal maid? The maid, with a cute smile, added that she was ordered to fulfill everything that Her Highness would wish. Eliza immediately decided to ask who gave this order, but Ivest did not quite understand this question. However, she explained that of course His Highness Archduke, who took care of everything properly. The maid joyfully announced that the princess would soon become his wife, so he gave this order. A little later, the Erzherzog came to her, who pushed the curtains and calmly asked if she felt normal. He explained that she lay in bed for 3 days. However, it turned out that this fact was not at all surprised by Elizabeth. The girl replied that she had heard it from Ivista, although she thought she just fell asleep for a short while, all this from overstrain. Now she is in order. The man was worried about her condition, since such weakness was unusual for him. Then she looked at the man, saying that one way or another, that she was still alive, gives her great hope. Reget and replied that, as Her Highness said, to achieve something too troublesome and irritating, if he could free himself from the captivity of the emperor with the help of one transaction, it would be the best possible. Perhaps she is even a good option for this, so there is an opportunity to try to fulfill her venture. She is a descendant of the hero who defeated the dragon, and he is a half-breed who inherited the blood of this dragon. Perhaps she will be able to suppress the power of his blood? The girl replied that she was sure that this is what would happen. The Archduke confirmed His Majesty with the words that they spent the night together, and also bribed his doctor. Elizabeth said that for a start, she was grateful to him for the fact that he still decided to accept her difficult proposal. The man replied that she did not need to thank him, because they simply use each other by mutual agreement. Therefore, this is just a marriage under a contract, in which both parties should promote mutually beneficial. He invited her to create a marriage for 6 months, after which he asked if she agreed such mutually beneficial conditions. Eliza thought that the emperor was obsessed with the thoughts of the successor, and if her stomach was not rounded, he would suspect something. Therefore, she definitely needs to do as this man said, and get pregnant for at least 6 months. Elizabeth calmly replied that she agreed to accept this proposal, but the Archduke did not finish this. If something goes wrong, he plans to tell the emperor the whole truth, then her fate will depend on her. A cold look, an unyielding manner of speech. Another feeling that she experienced earlier comes from him. He must be so behaving after this deal, because she probably was very difficult for him, but she was ready for such a cold attitude, so she only had to tolerate a little. The man said that Kristan, Lotir, and he would protect it for 6 months, so that it would not happen. The girl called out to him, but immediately fell silent. After a couple of seconds, Reget asked if she wanted something to tell him. Elizabeth blushed, with an awkward look, saying that he realized that he might not like a lot. After all, he will probably have a hard time with an unwanted woman, but he must promise that he will not reject her. For some time, Reget answered nothing, because of which the girl looked at him with a questioning look. Suddenly, the man grinned, answering that he was very glad that she was aware that children did not fall from the sky. Having embarrassed and turned away, Elizabeth said that he was not so stupid, and she knew all this very well. The Reget said that if she is worried, he could record their obligations and responsibility for failure to comply. Eliza was surprised, but immediately got out of bed, after which she went to the table and picked up the feather and paper. Then she asked if they should sleep 5 times for one period, and in those days when the doctor advises. She began to count that 5 times a month. It was 30 times in 6 months. Such numbers made the Archduke startle. Then she thought that this was very few, after which she asked him whether it was necessary to double this number by half. Looking at his face expression, she decided that it was better to increase 3, but she never received an answer. Closing his face with his hand, the Reget sighed heavily, asking her to write as many times as the conditions will allow. He does not really want it to be like his homework, where an exact number of times will be indicated. Blinding and embarrassed, the girl quickly agreed, deciding to do just that so as not to suffer. The actions of the contract ends on October 1st. It will have 6 months. If it gets pregnant, she will receive a delay. Suddenly, the Archduke leaned over and whispered in her ear that if she was scared, then he could leave at any moment. Elizabeth did not believe, asking for whether she could definitely leave at any moment, to which she received an affirmative answer. While she is safe, she will have enough time to find a way to return to Argon. Now she cannot lose a single chance, since she had the opportunity to get out of this captivity. Suddenly, Elizabeth said that she was no longer going to run away, since she has an obligation to him. A few days later, they decided to officially play the wedding, connecting their bonds by law, so that everyone knew about it. Elizabeth thought that if Andre saw this, he would have come in complete confusion from what was happening in front of him. She remembered how her brother told her that she would definitely find her the best man on this continent. This person will be kind, who will take care of her as a treasure that is more expensive in the world. She will have the most beautiful dress. They will receive a blessing in front of everyone, and they will have the best wedding. He organizes the celebration more luxurious and grandiose than that of the emperor, so that everyone around envies them. Therefore, she just must promise him that she will recover a little health before this great event. At that very moment, there was a voice of a priest who said that, as a representative of God, he accepts marriage vows. And now, in confirmation of the oath, they must kiss. This statement made the girl startle. However, in this way, they will show that their oath to God is not lying, and they carry sincere motives. After that, a small pause came, during which the girl thought whether she should take her first step. Meanwhile, Reget looked to the side, noticing the emperor, who carefully watched them. He remembered how he asked him if they really needed to marry, because it was just necessary to give birth to a child. Neuer replied that it was better to make a child and marry Miss from a noble family, which will be worthy of his family. If he had not chosen to demonstrate his feelings for the princess, everything would now be completely different. But he should not think that everything is so bad, because you might think that he hid anger at the princess, but this is not so. It was after all that she seduced him to survive. He was used as a fool, so they are now in this situation. And now, looking at his bride, the man asked himself whether he was true, or was it his true feelings? When Elizabeth approached him, she whispered that they could just pretend that they kiss. At this time, the Archduke tried to understand whether this is a craving or instinct, and what he could get from this marriage. Suddenly, he stated that if they went for it, then it was necessary to do everything properly without pretending to be everyone. Maybe this will be similar to the release of sins for daring to capture the princess at his discretion. After that, the man kissed her, thinking that if so, then he agrees, and it makes no sense to hesitate. When they finished, Reget looked at his soldiers, who were shocked by the unusual behavior of the captain. Then he looked at Elizabeth, hearing how the priest said that they officially became husband and wife. Suddenly, a man with a stone face acquired a surprised girl by the shoulder and abruptly pulled her to him. The ceremony was completed on this, after which the guests began to diverge a little. I congratulate them on marriage. Some time later, Ivesta asked what kind of urgent business was there. Reget Duke decided to leave Noisiers after the wedding. Elizabeth smiled awkwardly, and answering that something seems to have happened in the estate, and the matter did not tolerate delay. However, the maid immediately translated the topic, said loudly that she looked so excellent in that dress, and her husband did not even really have time to look at her, such a block that could not appreciate the true beauty of the bride. Having lowered her head, Eliza said that perhaps she did not look so beautiful that he looked around. Ivesta was very shocked by these words, asking, did she not see how knights looked at her? And this is despite the fact that she is the wife of their master, and this is forbidden. But they still could not restrain themselves. The girl sadly lowered her head, saying that the Archduke did not even look at her really. That was a little sad. Suddenly, she remembered the moment of the kiss, feeling that this was a demonstration of his sincerity. Suddenly, she shuddered when the Erzdux went to the carriage window and called out, thereby frightening a little. Opening the door, he asked with an important view. She could not leave the carriage for a while to talk to him. Elizabeth was surprised by his sudden appearance, which was due to which she asked if something happened. In response to this, he touched her cheek, after which he stated that the sun is not so scorching, so you can take a walk. If she will be in a carriage all the time, it can have a bad effect on her health. She needs to go out into the air more. After that, he asked how she looked at the horse to go with him, and not choke in a carriage. When Elizabeth came out, she noticed that the knights openly staring at her, and she thought that everyone was uncomfortable. Suddenly, the Reget put a hood on her, said that it would be better, then no one would pay attention to her. Although the sun does not shine brightly today, it is better to play it safe to avoid any problems. The girl answered him that she sees nothing in front of her. She would be very problematic to move. The Archduke, with a calm look, replied that he himself would take her, so she should leave everything as it is. 5 minutes later, they were already riding a horse, slowly walking along the path, enjoying good weather. Reget said that being constantly in such a small room for a long time is harmful. She was in the carriage for 2 days, and if she wants to go out, you just need to say, because otherwise he will not know about it. Elizabeth replied that, not that she was silent about this, she was just really comfortable in the room. In Argonne, she spent most of her time in the bedroom, so she was more used to being indoors. The man asked how the princess could be locked up in the castle, but Eliza replied that she was not locked up. The thing was that if she was on the street for a long time, she easily picked up the disease and stood out. Nevertheless, sometimes she went out with her brother for a walk in the garden, but this was only under his sensitive leadership. Such days were special for her, so in the morning she felt very excited. Despite the fact that after that she was usually sick, these days did not cease to be beautiful for her. Suddenly, the girl shuddered. Ask in yourself why now she feels normally and quite healthy. After all, it was enclosed in prison for a month and a half, but does not feel any echoes. Paying attention to her wrist, the princess noticed that the bruises of the handcuffs were almost healed, which was strange. The Erzherzog noticed the same, saying that she still had bruises, although they had to disappear. Elizabeth was surprised, answering that for the first time, she sees them to disappear so quickly, because before this was not the case. After all, only 10 days passed, so she did not understand how it was possible, because her body is always cycling in a different way. Suddenly, her eyes widened when she remembered Andre's words, that she would from now on will be healthy. Brother, with a smile on his face, asked to trust him, and she had no reason not to trust her own person. As Andre said, she really feels better, but it was not clear how this is generally possible. Suddenly, the Reget whispered something. The girl did not make out what exactly, but the man said that he did not say anything. Then he looked at her, then that she holds well, but as a person can be so fragile. She even has bruises after handcuffs last about 10 days, although another person would take a couple of days. He was curious whether she could withstand the half, pranks with such a body, and even more so, give birth to a child to him. Suddenly he flinched, thinking that he was visited by useless thoughts, which had never been before. Then he said that it would be nice. They stopped for a short while in a neighboring village to rest a little. Elizabeth suggested that he was tired, so she was not right to abandon this thought, because of which she agreed. At that very moment, Reuben, walking behind them, could not believe that the captain was tired. Deciding that he was heard, the girl decided to ask directly that after a 2-day ride on a horse and without rest, he was probably tired. Suddenly, she froze that she said that they could not go further, and they had to stop. Looking in the village, Elizabeth explained that here someone was waiting for them nearby, obviously arranging an ambush. Without wasting time, she pointed towards the trees, saying that for 12 hours, and aside 2 hours there is someone. At that very moment, an arrow flew next to the girl, which stuck into the ground, without causing her harm. The Reget put the horse on his hind legs, shouted that they were attacked, so everyone needed to prepare for the defense. Going down from the horse, the Archduke handed over to Eliza Reuben, asking to urgently get Her Highness to the center. He accepted the team, after which he asked her to follow him rather, so as not to fall under the attack of enemies. However, the girl did not hurry, instead of which she grabbed Reget by the raincoat and sincerely asked him to be careful. He drew attention to her trembling hands, but did not give in mind, asking Reuben to hurry to leave here. Elizabeth did not want to leave the person who literally just married, and therefore worried. Meanwhile, the soldiers tried to beat off arrows, urge each other to protect the center and her highness. Reuben, who covered the princess, also managed to beat off his arrows, cursing into the current situation. Suddenly, Elizabeth's gaze fell on one of the arrows, because of which she immediately found out to whom they belong and what are dangerous. The subordinate of the Erzherzog did not cry, screaming to the princess to hide in the carriage, and would never lean out. Meanwhile, Elizabeth loudly answered him that the arrow was with poison, so you need to be extremely careful. After all, if her memory does not fail, she saw such arrows when she ran away from Argan during an attack on him. Continuing to fight back, Reuben continued to swear that these barbarians had already reached their attempts to attack them. Grabbing the chest, Elizabeth was sure that their goal was she, but did not know what to do in this situation. She remembered that her brother told her that with the help of magic circles, you could cause protective and attacking spells. To use a magic circle, she just needs to put a hand on him and pronounce his name. The girl decided to do so, after which she mentally asked her brother to give her enough strength to protect. When she shouted his name, the carriage flashed with a bright light, reflecting the arrows directed in this direction. The Reget, which was far enough, turned around with surprise. Noticing a bright flash in the distance, he immediately recognized the protective magic, managing to notice how the arrows literally evaporated, touching the magic dome. At that very moment, Yanok came out to him, asking if he knew about everything, and that is why he intercepted this woman. Suddenly, a formidable smirk appeared on his face when he asked if Elizabeth Ause confessed to him. He was interested in whether she told him why Emperor Argan took care of his sister more than about himself. Reget replied that he did not understand what he was talking about. Then Yanok suggested that he really fell in love with her. Pointing to the Erzherzog with a finger, he asked to stop these love games and give him the princess's head right now. If he does this, then no one will block his path, and all his warriors will remain alive and sound. Suddenly, the Reget grinned, with anger in his voice, asking what he was going to do with the head of this woman. Then he began to transform, saying that he would not make such a mistake in the place of his highness. After all, now, by stupidity, he decided to attack with his human body on someone who is not even a man. He fearlessly attacked Rotiro knights, and although it is not known why they were a princess, but one was clearly. Grabbing Yanok by the throat of the dragon's hand, the man said that he never liked these disgusting eyes. After that, he sharply waved his hand, piercing the body of the prince of the corner, leaving him no chance of survival. When he stepped away, Yanok looked at the last out of breath, asking the Archduke to be careful with this girl. After all, this cunning forests will eventually drink everything that is possible from it, and will eventually disappear, like Emperor Argan. As soon as the last words came out of his mouth, somewhere in the distance, there was a girl's cry that attracted the attention of Reget. In the shower, his heart went into the heels when he heard someone shouted loudly about the princess's carriage. A few minutes ago, Ixa told Eliza, which it seems is already in order. It became much quieter than before. Looking at the expression on the face of the mistress, the maid suggested that she must be very scared. Elizabeth looked at her hand, feeling that the effect of magic had almost disappeared, then asked whether the Rajete was in order. They did not notice that a figure was confident in their direction, which had obviously unkind intentions. Feeling a shaking, Ixa clutched the princess and hugged her, asking worried about whether she was in order. Suddenly, the carriage staggered, as if someone began to move it from the opposite side, pushing them into a cliff. After a couple of minutes, the Erzherzog ran to the place, asking what happened. Reuben replied that the carriage was breaking. It seems that as soon as the barrier was weakened, the hidden enemy ran up and pushed the carriage, and the princess pushed it to Jesus. As a result, she was left there alone. But in order to go down from the cliff to the lake, you need to go around the valley, so they are going now. The subordinate looked in surprise at his captain, who froze with a thoughtful expression on his face. Reget thought that it might be better if she died in such a heroic way, because she will either die during mating with a Prankoon, or her stomach will tear the child in the womb, or the truth will be revealed, and it will be on the gallows. None of this would be worthy of the princess. In any case, Elizabeth awaits the sad end, no matter what path she chose, trying to save her life. And if everything is so bad, then it is better for her to drown in the lake now than trying to do even worse. Meanwhile, Reuben asked His Highness to give an order, but the man only turned around without saying a word. Instead, he sharply ran towards the lake to personally save Elizabeth from death. At this time, the girl who fell into the lake began to drown quickly, not making attempts to swim up. She only asked herself, did God really have prepared such death to her? Because she imagined her differently. If she was destined to die so, it would be better if she died even then, so she at least could protect the honor of the princess. At that very moment, she remembered the words of her brother, who said that she had to die so that she could live on. With tears in her eyes, and she asked what he was saying, but he only asked to never give up. After all, she is capable of much more than he, so she must promise that she will never give up again. This memory worked, because of which Elizabeth sharply opened her eyes, realizing that she was still early to die. She firmly decided that she could not give up, so now she needed to breathe fresh air at all costs. The magic circle on her back sparkled, helping her to surge. In addition, she helped herself with her arms and legs. Her eyes widened in surprise when she noticed the Archduke, who dived behind her in full equipment. After a couple of minutes, they were already on the shore, while the man checked the condition of the unconscious Eliza. Understanding that the girl swallowed water, he decided to make her artificial respiration in her mouth to breathe. As soon as the Archduke finished, the princess cleared his throat and opened her eyes, and the man asked if she was in order. More clearly, the lakes of blue eyes, if you look back. Then during all this time, this man was worried about it every time. She understood this only after she saw this strong storm, whose witness was many times. After these thoughts, Elizabeth cried and tried to smile, saying that she was able to survive once again. Hearing these words, Reget hugged her, clinging to himself deep down, rejoicing that this girl did not die. As a child, the doctor said that it would not be strange. She would clean it even now, although he is very sorry to say that. But he does not know whether Her Highness of the Princess will be able to survive, as he is very bad. The girl slept tightly, but her body was pierced by heat and high temperature, during which she turned in a dream. As a child, she envied her brother for most of her time, because he did not suffer from frequent diseases. Some time later, she told Andre that it was very good that he is healthy, and she also wants to be like that. The guy with sincere interest asked if she did not like to get sick, because she was in bed all the time. The girl considered this question very offensive, so she pouted, answering that she really did not like it. Eliza asked to look at her hair, because they were terrible. Every time they get sick, the color of her hair dulls. When it becomes even older, it will completely lose its chestnut color, and she and her brother will be very different. Andre said that, on the contrary, he considers them beautiful, after which he took the curls of her hair in his hand, examining him. Andre always consoled her with his sincerity, and every time she complained, she was painful to look at him. A few years later, she told him that everything was in order, because she was far from a child and feels better. The girl said with a smile that she was no longer sick in a day. In the end, she had to swallow the words of envy. She just repeated over and over again that everything was fine. But her brother did not believe her, often letting out a tear because of her. However, from this she only became worse. She could not share about her physical suffering, and her spirit broke. And at some point, she was on the border between life and death. As a result, Elizabeth cursed herself. One day, the doctor put a bottle of medicine in front of her. I will explain that she needs to take it a little. It helps for sleep, but this medicine can become a poison if you take too much for its weight. The girl carefully looked at the medicines, realizing that she could be saved, so harm her fragile health. As a result, she made a stupid decision to drink it almost to the bottom, which is why she almost said goodbye to life. Andre, who discovered her, sobbed, holding her, saying that all this happened solely because of him. He asked not to leave Eliza, and not to leave him, because he does not imagine his life without his own sister. The girl opened her eyes. I heard her brother said that she could not do anything for her and her health. She mentally asked him what the point is to hinder such an existence if he has been in bed all his life. When she got out, her brother said that he needed to draw a magic circle on her, but it would be a little painful. The girl began to ask what magic was talking about, because she would be uncomfortable to wear something unknown on herself. Touching her back, the guy replied that this is a magic that could forever eliminate the cause of her illness. From that day, Andre kept on a day-by-day on her body magic circles, attack, protection, and self-destruction. Each time he drew magic circles and explained why each of them was needed, but he said nothing about the first. She never found out what it was for the magic that Andre poured into her that day, and for what she was needed. And now the Reget brought Elizabeth in his arms to the room, while they were completely wet from the water. The girl asked if he would be here for several days, because he had some urgent affairs. The man replied that even the strongest knight would not be in order after he fell from the cliff to the lake. Eliza realized that we were talking about her, answering that she was in order, and she did not hurt anything thanks to magic. At that very moment, she remembered that in the lake her body somehow reacted, the feeling that she had used magic. At that very moment, Reuben's voice was heard from behind the door, who informed the master that the water for the bath was ready. The Archduke heard him, but the guy decided with an uncertain look to remind him of punishment for him. Reget, with a formidable look, said that from noon until the night no one should come here, including him. Hearing their dialogue, Elizabeth was surprised to ask why Rotiro knights must be punished. The man explained that they could not execute the order properly, and as a result, they could not protect the owner. They will answer for this in fairness, so she has nothing to worry about, because now she should take care of herself. Reget also explained that Avesta damaged her hand. The injury is not serious, but it is still inconvenient for her to use it. Therefore, he will help her so far. Hearing this, the girl was surprised that they would live together in the same room. With an indifferent look, the Archduke said that there was nothing strange in the fact that her husband and wife were divided one room. Eliza, with an uncertain look, asked how he could help her if she needed to take a bath right now. At that very moment, the man touched her cheeks, saying that she was all shifted, so he would do everything to help. To begin with, she needed to take off wet clothes. But Elizabeth, embarrassed, said that she could do everything herself. Taking her hand, he said that he sees that she even painfully move her fingers. It is not unlikely that she could do everything herself. Therefore, he politely asked her not to push him away, since he sincerely wants to help her and take care of his wife. He added that he would be unpleasant, and the girl thought that if she pushes him away, he would definitely not retreat. In any case, be that as it may, they will have to do the like more than once, since they decided to conceive a child. And since everything is in order, the Reget went up to her, after which he held out his hand, starting to slowly undress Elizabeth. Holding a towel in his hand and glancing at the girl, the commander-in-chief froze with the amazement and beauty of his wife. Then he covered it with a towel, but noticed that the man looks rather angry. Although now the Archduke was a caring husband, frank irritation was written on his face. A few minutes later, Elizabeth was in the bathroom, warming her body in warm water, looking at his hand. She thought that she was precisely pushed by some kind of power. The feeling is the same as when she killed the knight. The girl felt that something was happening with her body, and now she asked Andre what he did to her. At that very moment, the Regeta came to her, calmly said that if she needs to help, she could call him. When he was about to leave, the girl stopped him with interest, asking if he was angry with her because of something. With an awkward look, she explained that now his behavior and voice seemed more stringent than before. She earned this anger because all this happened because of her, but she needed to hear his thoughts about it. Indeed, due to the fact that the corner was aimed at it, others almost became victims, and his plans also changed. Elizabeth thought about the fact that she always causes him only troubles, asking himself what was wrong with her. At that very moment, surprise appeared on her face when she heard the answer of the Archduke that he was not angry. With an indifferent look, he asked if she forgot about their contract, because he never throws him out of his head. She takes care of the continuation of his family, and he is about her safety. But today, he could not fulfill his part. The foundation of the content of their contract is mutual assistance, so it is he who is to blame for everything, and it should be angry with it. He should not have left her on others, while he himself decided to go away to push the enemy. Of course, it was an absurd mistake that because of his impulse, he could not leave the battlefield when he was required. Not that a specific problem was hostile to the kingdom of the corner or Yanok Sikat. It's just that this greed in relation to the princess hurt him, and he did not want someone to offend her again. But then, when he saw a carriage falling from the cliff, I thought that perhaps it would be even for the better. But I was mistaken. After all, is it normal that he is so contrary to himself, and now it is very difficult for him to put his thoughts in order? Reget said that this happened because he forgot about something important, and henceforth would do everything possible. Leaving the bathtub, Elizabeth shook herself in a towel, after which she asked if he wanted to say that she was important to him. The man replied that of all the people who were ever under his defense, she was the most precious. There were no people like her, about whom he would care with such a desire and a sense of responsibility. But suddenly, he added that this was the case before that moment, and it would be another 6 months, while their contract is valid. The girl asked, in this case, not to brush her away from her, and he does not need to take the first step, fulfilling the conditions. However, he should not dismiss her when she takes the first step, otherwise the girl feels embarrassed. Eliza added that he knows that he is the only one for whom she can hold at the moment of her life. Having lost everything, the only thing it can cling to, this is an imprudent contract that they concluded. And if this man would turn away from her, she would have drowned at that bottom of the lake today and disappear forever. There are no more safe places for her, because any place where it will not be, it will be the bottom of the lake. She will never forget this shy, and now she will always remember him when the Reget will not be with her. Then Elizabeth asked him not to leave her on other people, as they could not protect her as he is. She asked to promise this so that in the future she was sure that at such moments he would be with her. Taking her hand, the man moved closer to her and, looking straight into his eyes, said that he promises her to this. That same night, Erztuzog sat on the edge of the bed and read a letter, sometimes looking out of the corner of his eye at the sleeping Elizabeth. Suddenly, the girl through a dream stated that she was cold. The man checked her temperature, and she was high. He thought that no matter how many times he warmed, the heat in some strange way leaves her again. Then he decided to lie down next to her and hug, because of which the girl woke up, feeling pleasant warmth. Suddenly, she shuddered, realizing that she was lying on a man, because of which she was immediately embarrassed, turning to him. Reget, with a calm look, said that it seemed to him that she was frozen. Elizabeth was surprised at his insight. Then the girl laid her head on his chest, feeling that she was very warm, but not quite comfortable. She decided to show him that this pose was a little embarrassing, but this Archduke asked her not to fuss. Suddenly, Eliza stared at him with a questioning look, feeling how something firm touches her. The man immediately asked not to pay attention to it, but the girl immediately blushed, saying that she could not. Reget suddenly hugged her, saying that she could think about it as a preparation for their future plans. After all, did it not want this? And she herself insisted on this. And now, for some reason, he hesitates. Eliza said that she was uncomfortable when she heard that if she further moves, she would only make it worse. Looking carefully at her, the man thought rationally that it was necessary to be careful, since she was so fragile. After all, by any awkward movement, it can inadvertently harm, so you need to be extremely careful. What then, what now, will be like a constant, as if he, like a crow, will crave what shines. A week later, the convoy went further on the road, while Elizabeth was in a carriage with Vesta. The maid, which quickly went recovering, with a smile asked Her Highness to look out the window, pointing her finger. The maid added that they are approaching, and they almost arrived in Rotiro, and the girl looked out in the window with surprise. She thought that in the north the land of the harsh mountains, and forests of Grenter, and fruitful plains along the Ten River in the south. In winter, there is also warmth here, as in the south, so the north is considered an equivalent to valuable territory for the empire. This is her refuge for the next 6 months, so she needs to get used to life as soon as possible. So they arrived in Rotiro, the blessed territory of Banella, where there was a real house of Reget. They were met by a huge number of servants, solemnly and sincerely congratulating His Highness on the return. The Archduke did not particularly react to this, only asking if nothing happened here in his absence. The main butler, Alfredo, replied that only the minor problems, which he notified of in letters. Family assistant. The college added that there was only a list of payments that have accumulated during this time. At that very moment, among all, the most loud voice was given by a woman who turned directly to the Archduke. The main maid Pettenson bowed and stated that she was glad that the master had returned intact and safety. It seemed to her that something had happened to him, because earlier she received news from Sir Reuben and was surprised. So, finally, the hostess will appear in Retiro. The rest of the inhabitants were shocked that she went right away. At that very moment, she slowly left the carriage, extending her hand to Reuben, so that he helped her safely descend. Looking at her, the servants decided that it was true, and they could not believe that he had married and even said nothing to them. Although, judging by their workloads, they would still not be up to it, since the work accumulated incredibly. Mrs. Pettinson clarified that His Highness went against the Emperor, but still decided to marry. Therefore, she is very interested in knowing what this woman is about to become a mistress. At that very moment, Reget said that since they had finished with greetings, now you can walk a little on the castle. The man extended his hand to his wife. Thereby, I invite her to an excursion. But she was in no hurry to answer. Elizabeth refused, saying that he should go about his business. These words were very surprised by the man. She added that, because of her, his plans had changed, and it seems that he had accumulated a lot of unfinished things. With a stone expression on his face, Reget replied that the castle had a very complex structure, and it would be easy to get lost in it. Elizabeth awkwardly replied that in this case she could ask Sir Reuben, and she still has Ives. The Archduke explained that Reuben could not even protect her. When he heard these words, the knight next to him immediately drooped. Eliza clarified that this is his castle, so it should not be dangerous here, especially when a faithful knight is nearby. Reget replied that even if it is safe, other people still know anything about her and may be indifferent. Elizabeth confidently stated that now they will know. Besides, he could not always be accompanied. She does not want him to be distracted because of such a trifle. The man was surprised that she called the same trifle. Listening to them, the servants thought that His Highness was already stubborn in itself, but it seems that the new mistress is also not easy. Elizabeth said that there are things that she can do. She is uncomfortable that she causes inconvenience. The man protested, answering that this was not inconvenience. This is his duty to both the knight and her legal husband. However, Eliza stood on her, saying that if she had problems, she would turn to the butler or maid. Alfredo reacted instantly, offering Her Highness to escort her in order to familiarize him with the castle. The girl asked if he was not against showing her the main tower, and then the room. He happily agreed. The butler politely added that he would also introduce her to the maids who will be assigned to her in the future. The collapse turned to Reg, saying that he was also tired of the road, so he could relax and eat in his office. The guy explained that heirs du Zogeny with Alfredo and Mrs. Pettinson, so he definitely has nothing to worry about. Suddenly, the Archduke interrupted him, asking him to call her princess. The collapse was surprised at such an unusual request. The Reget, in turn, explained that it would not have a time for the status of heirs du Zogeny for long, so formalities are useless. After 5 minutes, the butler explained to the girl that the stairs are very steep, so you need to be very careful. This area was often invaded by neighboring states, so the bedrooms are located on the top of the tower. The man advised her not to climb this staircase alone, as she is too steep and dangerous. He then added that His Highness spends most of his time in his office, which he will show later. Elizabeth thought that this area, of course, justifies its beautiful name, Blessed Earth. This is an ideal refuge, where there is no scaffold and severity of the north, but you cannot lose your head from a beautiful picture. As a child, she lived in an illusion and thought that this world was endlessly beautiful, but then this appearance collapsed with Argan. Suddenly, she thought about whether this place really is refuge, or she will have to be much more difficult than before. Perhaps this is another battlefield, but she was not yet sure, because she had not yet had time to step on this land. Noticing the Erzog approaching her, Elizabeth asked with surprise and trepidation whether he had already freed himself. The man explained that he was returning because he was worried, although he went only 1 hour, after which he raised her in his arms. He asked this time not to push him away, although, as she said, he has a lot of things today, but it is more important. After all, if her condition worsens, it will be difficult for him to concentrate due to experience, so he is here now. Gently clinging to his shoulder, Elizabeth replied that this time she did not even plan to push him away. Then she added that it has passed for an hour. It must have been difficult for him to climb this staircase every time. Suddenly smiled, answering that he had never climbed the stairs for more than an hour. It surprised Eliza. The man added that he would not hurt to try, after which he looked into her eyes, hinting at the romantic situation. But when she was in her room, Ivesta said that this duke immediately went to his office. The servants told her that she had a very busy day today, during which she met the castle. After that, the maid asked if the lady was tired, and she could ask to prepare her water in the bath to prepare her. Not having time to answer, they heard Mrs. Pettinson's voice outside the door. Eliza said that she would come in. As soon as the door opened, Elizabeth's face froze in bewilderment when she saw not only the main maid. The woman said that she brought the maids who would serve her. She did not forget to carefully prepare them. The girl replied that she did not need so many servants. She was enough with her head with another assistant. Mrs. Pettinson said that there would be few 2 people, after which she decided to clarify, is she not pregnant? Therefore, she would provide him with a person from Rotiro. This old man could not calm down when he heard the news about her, since she must understand that His Highness is a difficult person, and she is tired, having made a long way. That is why she brought with him the doctor of the Rotiro castle. The man immediately bowed, but did not make a sound. The maid explained that the doctor who was traveling with her needs time to relax, and she needs to go through an examination. Elizabeth thought worriedly that if the healer of the Rotiro castle examines her, then this would not end in anything good. He may guess that she is not pregnant, then a contract with the Archduke, and her life can be at risk. Due to his alertness, it is unlikely that he still told someone this secret, which means that there was something else. The girl was practically sure that this is a Miss Pettinson conference, who decided to verify everything in everything. Elizabeth decided to go to the trick, saying that he was now wanting to make out her things with the Evest, and she was not up to the inspection. She will transfer him until her doctor is ready, because this is not such a strong need to check her. The woman explained that this would not take much time, so you need to take their care of the new mistress of the castle. Eliza thought that this was not her homeland, where she lived all her life. Here, no one would want to gain her location. She had no choice but to agree, so she proposed to start examining as soon as possible. After a couple of minutes, the doctor began to study her body, first measuring the pulse and the general external indicators of the body. The man said that the pulse is so weak that it is so difficult to determine the state of her body. It seems that, for the exact conclusion, you need to take a blood test, so the older maid said that you need to take it. Suddenly, Isa was adjusted into the conversation, saying Mrs. Pettinson that this was already too much, which was very surprised by Elizabeth. The maid asked if she wanted to stick a needle into a person who still hadn't rested after a long journey. And what is the need to do this now? Even if they take blood, the results still do not immediately seem. She asked the doctor to move away, because nothing would happen if he postpones an inspection for several hours, and will come later. Eliza added that she was not surprised that the doctor could not make a conclusion, because this is not the strength of ordinary healers. In addition, the owner chose her doctor, so she does not see the point in one more, which was sent by the servant. Therefore, she said that there is no point in such a hurry to check her pulse now, because she knows her body better. Then the girl added that this is how they serve their master in Rotiro, hinting at the disobedience of servants. Pettinson apologized for rudeness, and Elizabeth said that she would not mind if she leaves her one maid. She does not like when there are more than 3 people near her. An extra amount can bring her inconvenience. However, she hopes that the request to have fewer people does not spoil the name of Rotiro, because it concerns her comfort. Therefore, she would like that she would not have to repeat the same thing again and again. Returning to this topic, Pettinson bowed, answering that she understood everything perfectly, so they will do everything as she said. Toward evening, Ixa said that these people are really not ready to serve her, and Erzsuzga should be told about this. However, Elizabeth thought that all these people are her close circle now, but none of them are on her side. In addition, Mrs. Pettinson looks quite experienced, which means that there will probably be the most problems with her. Who knows, perhaps, she wants to convey news about her pregnancy with a letter to the emperor, but this cannot be allowed. For her safety, she needs to somehow lure her to her side, when suddenly her gaze moved to Evest. The girl began from afar, asking if she remembered that when the carriage fell from the cliff, she saved her, pushing her away. The maid replied that she could not forget such kindness, because if not for the mistress, she would not have gotten away only with her hand. Then Elizabeth uncertainly asked how to change her owner to pay for a saved life, although she is her maid. But still the man of the Archduke. But she wanted to see her closer next to her. She does not intend to betray the Archduke, just asks to help her stay safe in this castle. Elizabeth concluded that she would not be able to deceive the maid, which is near her constantly, and Ivesta is the only one of all who she has at the moment, and she is one who can definitely be trusted. After that, the girl told the maid that initially there was no child, and this whole story was a continuous lie. Hearing this, the eyes of the maid expanded, because she could not believe what she had just heard from the mistress. At that very moment, the door opened, and the girl added that it seems that a person who would prove this fact has arrived. After a while, the doctor applied the Archduke that if you provide her healthy diet and good sleep, there will be no problems. There are no consequences after the experienced. Therefore, it seems, there is nothing to worry about. And there is also no threat to life. The man asked if she handed her his words. The elderly woman answered in the affirmative, dutifully bowing her head. She told her everything that she knew, along with his words. Reget asked what her reaction was ultimately. A few hours ago, Ivesta was shocked when he heard that the fetus inside the body could really harm him. After all, when the fruit of the semi-prankoon grows enough and will take a human form, it will begin to significantly rage. His Highness is a special case. Most dragons relate to monsters. The same applies to semi-pranks. As you know, the body is not able to survive the birth of a monster, even if the child holds out in the womb for 10 months. The body of the mother, in which he sucked all nutrients, will not be able to cope with the process of birth itself. As a result, the child himself leaves the womb and is born, without waiting for the birth of a natural way. Elizabeth, listening to all this, was noticeably sad, after which the image of the Archduke and his words broke out in her head. Once he said with a strange smile that she herself said that he wanted to die a terrible death, giving birth to him. Then Eliza asked what she needed to pay attention to when she wages an intimate connection with the semi-precon. The woman was surprised at this issue, after which she replied that there are some points that should be avoided. There is one day when the rage of the dragon of the Semicites in relation to people comes out, and this is especially noticeable. At this time, they either kill people or go to some crimes. The Archduke leaves for hikes at such a time. The riot does not subside until he sees human blood or satisfy his intimate desires. Dragon people are very vulnerable to their needs, and they are also very persistent during intimacy. Ivesta said that this should not be allowed, because it is possible to agree to a connection, which carries death. Then she asked Her Highness to think about her choice again, because otherwise she could not survive this. Elizabeth raised her head, and with a confident look asked that this was not impossible, and she was obliged to try. Looking at the dumbfounded faces of the maid and the doctor, the girl explained what had in mind exclusively the structure of the body. Hearing a full report, the Reget grinned and crossed his arms over his chest, saying that she was very fearless, or she hopes for the best. At the same second, his thoughts was interrupted by the doctor, said that this could sound like a chatter. Although its recovery goes well, this does not mean that she is as well as ordinary women. Therefore, when he divides the bed with her, the woman politely asked the Archduke to be very careful, and, if possible, you need to be a little more affectionate, because Her Highness is unfamiliar with natural pleasures. The man decided to clarify that he should not rudely hug her, embarrassed. The woman confirmed his words. Reget said that if he did not know that there would not be so much headache, because earlier he had already hugged her. Letting go of the doctor, the man thought that it seemed to be better for some time to stay from the princess. At that very moment, Mrs. Pettinson entered the office, asking that he could not devote a little time to the old woman. After a couple of minutes, he said that he ordered her to communicate with the princess just like him, but she brought her a doctor. Suppose the woman replied that she did not think, and therefore generously asks for forgiveness. With an indifferent expression on his face, Reget said that she seems to be really ashamed, so he forgives her. At that very moment, Pettinson asked if she could tell him something like his nanny, and not the main maid. The man froze, asked to say. The woman said that he wanted him to marry the one whom she loves. She still remembers a 9-year-old boy who first entered the territory of the imperial castle. He had such an empty look, but he looked with a desire at those who had a high rank, especially the emperor. But besides this, there was something else that she noticed. But before the village of Moment, she did not share these thoughts with anyone. Pedinson said that exactly when he saw the emperor, he is now looking at her highness to the princess. Therefore, now she politely asked him to tell honestly whether he was actually not a mistress into the house, and she does not need to obey and worship, because she is exactly the one whom he really considers to be a companion of life. The man bowed his head inquiringly, asking if there were two options at once, because this is more logical. Pedinson replied that the princess was supposed to be hanged in the capital, but escaped it due to pregnancy. He can deceive His Majesty, but he will not be able to deceive this old woman who has been with him throughout his life. Then she decided to ask directly what the real reason why he brought Her Highness to Rotiro. At first, the woman suggested that it was only because of envy, speed, or pity, clearly something from this. However, Reget replied that everything was simply because he wanted to do this. Then he asked if her answer was satisfied. Having got up, he added that he understands that she is his nanny, but she allows herself too much now. Pattinson thought that he feels in the treatment of people who seem precisely created in the likeness of the gods. But she knows that he does this not out of sympathy or admiration. The whole thing was much deeper. This is the result of the fact that he has learned to hate himself since childhood, because of which now he is very difficult. The woman turned to the Archduke, who took a place at the table, asking him to sleep in his bedroom. She clarified that Her Highness was waiting for him. After that, she left the office, leaving the man alone. Meanwhile, Elizabeth was in her room and turned in a dream, simultaneously making slurred sounds. When she opened her eyes, she saw Andrei, whose head was bandaged, closing one of his eyes. Without responding to her comments, the guy also began to ask, in Liana, and what is happening to her now? Then he made her startle, sharply and loudly, asking how she could do so recklessly and stupid. Then he shouted that she was Princess Argan, as she could agree to get pregnant from the Archduke of Kristan. Having cried, Elizabeth replied that she had no choice, and she did it because she needed to survive. Interrupting her excuse, her brother grabbed her by the shoulders, asking to start leaving Retiro as far as possible. Then he said that he needed to leave, after which his silhouette began to slowly dissolve in front of the girl. The next second, Elizabeth opened her eyes, stretching out her hands in front of her, shouting the name of her brother into the trail. Then Eliza thought out loud that while she was traveling to Rotiro, he never dreamed of her when he suddenly appeared. Her gaze moved to the pillow next to her, because of which the girl concluded that yesterday the Reget did not come either. A week passed. How she arrived in Retiro. If you add a trip, then they have concluded a contract for a month now. She remembered how the man gave her a promise, but she thought that this was a promise that would not be fulfilled. When she went out into the corridor, Ivesta screamed after her. That was still cold in the morning, so she asked to dress properly. At that very moment, they stopped, noticing Mrs. Pettinson in front of them, who asked if she was well sleeping. Looking at her replaced behavior, the girl calmly replied that thanks to her care, she slept well. The woman asked the maid to bring a shawl for Her Highness, and as soon as possible, she immediately agreed. The maid bowed, asking the princess to wait a bit, thereby surprising the new mistress of Rotiro. At the same time, Elizabeth thought that it seems that there are a lot of beautiful women in the castle, even though they are ordinary maids. From her thoughts, the calm voice of the main maid was distracted, who asked if she needed something else. Eliza decided to ask directly whether Mrs. E chose all those who are now working in this castle. The woman replied that until that time, they took the servants with the butler, and they can prepare her a list. Then she added that if they did not choose someone, then the Archduke directly sent these people. Elizabeth asked if he chose the servants, to which the maid replied that he sent candidates to the title of Erzherzogini. Such a statement dumbfounded the girl, and her heart began wildly pounding, because she did not expect something like that. After a couple of minutes, she alone went down the stairs, thinking about what she had just heard from Pettinson. Based on the wall, she thought that he personally sent not servants, but candidates for the title of Erzherzogini, because His Majesty gives great attention to the marriage of Archduke and does everything possible for this. These women are sent by a personal imperial family, so they cannot refuse them, and they were hired as servants. Elizabeth heard that the semi-pranks are located to licentiousness, which led her to a terrible thought. Perhaps one of these women was close to him, and for some time, close contact was maintained with him. At the same time, the surprised Reget asked if she herself went to the office, not finding her wife here. Ivesta replied that she wanted to go alone. She was so adamant that they could not do anything. Hearing an apology, the man sighed heavily, asking if something Her Highness is still bothering. The maid replied that it seems that she had problems with sleeping. It seems that she constantly dreams of some nightmares. The Archduke thought about the fact that it was strange, because while they were traveling to Retiro, nothing of the kind happened to her. However, this was not all, and the maid added that it seems that Her Highness was restless to sleep alone. Indeed, on the road, he was always next to her. Perhaps this somehow influenced her further life with the Archduke. Only a week has passed since they arrived in Retiro, so she will need time to get used to it. In addition, Issue asked, unless she needs the warmth of her husband, who is absent every night. Reget asked if she said so, but the maid replied that if she was next to her, this can be understood. Therefore, she invited him to go to Her Highness in the office in order to spend a little time alone. After all, she went to look for him there, but it seems that they were smashing, and now they are time to meet. The man replied that she understood everything. The girl indicated the path and stated that he should head towards this door. When asked what door we were talking about, Ivesta replied that she was talking about the door leading from the bedroom straight to his office. Suddenly, Reget's face was depressed when he asked if the princess went down the ladder alone. At that very moment, Ixa froze with a stupid smile, realizing that she had let go of the mistress alone to a dangerous staircase. Meanwhile, Elizabeth thanked Reuben, because if not for his help, she would have stuck on that stairs. Rubbing his head, the guy replied that they must have been locked up to the office because they were not used for a long time. But he did not think that she would so hide at the door. But the girl replied that she had just tapped a little. Reuben explained that this is a very dangerous staircase, so it is better not to walk here alone, otherwise it will be bad. After all, the Archduke will worry. But Eliza replied that it was uncertain, that he would worry since he was cold. The guy was dumbfounded by such a statement. I will explain that he is actually very gentle and kind to her. She simply did not see how he treats the knights, so fierce that he has a chill through his back. If you are not so touched, you can immediately say goodbye to this world, since the captain does not forgive anything to anyone. And with her, he is like a ripe peach, so soft. So in this regard, she has absolutely nothing to worry about. Suddenly, the girl was distracted, felt the horse touched her shoulder, and she immediately decided to stroke her. Reuben shuddered, stating with concern that she was very dangerous to touch this horse, because she was a fighting one. But the next second, surprise froze on his face when he saw that absolutely nothing was happening. Elizabeth said that despite its large size, he is very affectionate and gently refers to strangers. Why did she decide to ask the name of this child? To which the knight replied that the gentleman still had not given him a name. Continuing to stroke the horse, the girl carefully asked the horse that his master was so heartless. Reuben said in surprise that the horse was so hard and uncontrollable that only the Archduke tamed him. Then Eliza asked the horse when his owner would appear, because it is very unfortunate that her searches did not lead to anything. The guy friendly said that if boring, they could take a walk along the castle to pass the time a little. The girl asked if she could lend a horse to ride around the yard, but there she could choose any horse. With a smile on her face, the girl turned to the Chernish, asking if he would ride her, in response to which she received his snort. At that very moment, the man behind her stated that this is not possible, and can a pregnant woman ride a horse? Suddenly, the Rajel came up and hugged her from behind, adding that it is very dangerous to be close to the combat horse. Putting away and looking away, Elizabeth replied that this world is full of dangerous things, and sometimes it is worth risking. Having removed the cloak from himself, the man covered her wife with her, saying that he was like this for her, so she should be more careful. Looking carefully at her face, he asked if she was so easily dressed all this time, after which she began to wait for the answer. She replied that she had not met almost anyone from the castle, and on the way, other knights saw her in simpler clothes. Reget asked her to walk in such clothes only in front of him. Others should not see her in a similar form. This is allowed only to the maids that look after her in the bedroom. and there are no other exceptions. Eliza said that it does not matter, because he too does not see her often in such clothes. With sadness on her face, she added that he was so busy that even in a day she could not visit her at least once. However, the Archduke decided to return to the previous topic, asking if she would continue to walk in this light clothes. Elizabeth answered displeasedly that if not to tell anyone that this is a nightie, no one would even think about it. Then the man touched her lips, asking not to bite them, because she probably hurts, and he would not want to see it. Eliza asked that he was such a strict person to come here and call her reckless, because she was already ashamed. Suddenly, he grabbed her in his arms, strictly ordering Reuben to go to him separately in the office for conversation. The girl was worried about why he was doing this, because Sir Reuben simply escorted her, as befits a knight. Noticing how he turned his head, the girl thought that every time he was just silent when he did not want to answer. Looking after them, the soldier thought that they really looked like a married couple, and it was a wonderful picture. When they returned to the room, Eliza said that she did not understand why he was angry with her, demanding an explanation. After all, if he does not want her to leave the hospital, while about him to come more often, we must not forget why it is here, and they need to get down to business. But he did not want to do this now. Elizabeth was unhappy, looked at him, thought that, of course, he did not want, because he still has many other options. Then she got out of bed, saying that in this case there is no point in just sitting and dutifully wait for him. Reget shuddered when he heard that she was going to ask Sir Reuben to show her the castle. After that, with a severe look, she asked him to move away so that he would let her go, because she had business. The man thought that she wanted to say that they had no reason to be together if they are not trying to have a child. After that, a small pause came, during which they silently looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Putting his hand on her shoulder, the Archduke said that he perfectly understands what she wants from him at this second. He does not like most in his life when the merger of bodies occurs with someone whom he does not even know. Like animals that succumbed only to instincts, albeit with his essence, he was born just that. A monster who was previously temporarily born, getting rid of his mother in an incredibly cruel way. Such as he, blinded by lust, and they do not care about those who are under them. Because of this, semi-pranks are worse than animals. His nature is not very far away from them, so he tries to stay away from her so as not to tempt. He thought that he could cool if he would see her face less often, but everything was not so at all, and nothing changed. The girl watched in surprise how the man touches her cheek, while he thought that she wished her. Just like 3 years ago, when he first met her, he still feels the same emotions. He still wants this painfully beautiful woman to belong only to him, and no one else. This sparkling thing that fell into his hands, albeit for a short while, but should stay with him as long as possible. After all, she must remain intact, without any damage, and he is obliged to fully store its integrity. At that very moment, he remembered the words of Mrs. Pettinson, who said that it was because of envy, self-interest, or pity. An ambiguous smile appeared on the Reget's face when he concluded that she was right, and he feels all this. After that, the Archduke said that he wanted to say that they can do this when they recognize each other better. Elizabeth looked at him in surprise, asking if he wanted to become closer, because before that he did not show this. When asked how much time it will take, the man replied that it depends on how much she would meet. The girl turned her head in displeasure, saying that it was he should make efforts, because he did not show her. And when she went to look for him, she immediately got angry, because of which Sir Reuben was unreasonably scolded. Suddenly, Reget held out his hand, saying that the festival is now being held in the square, behind the territory of the castle. Crouching on one knee and taking her hand, the man asked if she wanted to go there tomorrow. That night, Reget thought that they even signed a contract, so he could not avoid this forever. You just need not to do everything gradually, so as not to do it worse than yourself or to her. Only then everything will work out. At that very moment, he shuddered, looking questioningly at the girl who, through his dream, began to mumble the name of his brother. Andre asked her to leave there, because she knows that Rotiro is not a place for her, and she has a home. She could not clearly see his face, but she heard a scream who called to leave away from the castle. The Hertzduke was surprised to watch the girl's body began to sparkle with magic, and she began to leave her body. Taking the curls of her hair in his hands, he, not understanding anything, began to ask what it is. because he saw this for the first time. The next day, they went to the festival. Elizabeth said that she was glad that it was not so hot in the north in the summer. Bending a little, Reget decided to ask what exactly was so pleasing to her, supporting the conversation. The girl, surprised by such a question, replied that even in such close clothes, she was not hot now. She looked at a man who said that if it became difficult for her, she should definitely tell him about it. Eliza replied that she was hard, but she never went on such a long walk, so she likes everything. Reget asked if she had never reached long walks, which looked very strange for the princess. The princess, slightly embarrassed, replied that as soon as her walk was linger, Andre immediately resorted to. He always carefully picked her up in his arms, worried that she was very dangerous to walk on the ground. She remembered how she was upset due to the fact that he did not always raise her in his arms, but it was a very long time ago. After that, with a sincere smile, she asked what she was there. Turning to him officially, Reget gently grabbed her by the hood, naming her name, while the girl did not understand why he did it. The man asked to call him by name, because the title is too remarkable, and someone can find them here. Eliza nodded, thought that first of all she needed to hide her name, if I needed to go unnoticed. Then she decided to ask who gave him this name. The Archduke replied that the Emperor called him so. The girl asked what his name was before meeting him, because she heard that he entered the palace at the age of 9 years. Reget replied that even now he rarely calls by name, and before that, he had a life where the name was not needed. At that very moment, she called him, and with a smile on her face, also asked to call her by name so that everything was honest. She explained that too, after the death of her parents, only her brother called by name, and the rest practically did not see. The man asked how the Emperor Argan called her. She replied that usually he called her Lizzie alone. After all, she could not leave the castle, so her brother often came to her room. This was surprised by the Archduke. He suggested that she was not specifically released, but all this time he was bothered by another detail. The energy that came out of a small body is not the power of the princess, but some kind of alien magical power. And it seems that only one person could dare to apply magical signs on this body. It was obvious. Reget turned to her officially, but the girl with a displeased look reminded that he should call her by name. He corrected himself, after which he asked how she feels now, in comparison with the time when she lived in Argan. At first she was surprised at this issue, after which she replied that, surprisingly, she was better than before. Now she has gone to the thought, is it not from the fact that her body is now trying to survive in this way after the death of her brother? And if so, then they have something in common again. But the Archduke did not answer anything only by thinking. So, the health of the princess began to recover after the death of the emperor, which was a very strange phenomenon. There is clearly something here, between the Emperor of Argan and the princess. After all, they are twins, and their connection is very strong. Suddenly, he thought that the angle persistently aimed at the princess's neck, as if he wanted to show something, as well as the words of Yanok, that it is a tricky forest at the end, will drink everything that is possible from him, and in the end will disappear. Then the Reget, with a shock, suggested that Emperor Argan is still alive, and his death is a huge lie for everyone. A few days later, the maid said that the gentleman and the lady became closer since they arrived from the festival. The news of pregnancy, Her Highness, caused a suspicious awkwardness, but now they have breakfast together. They also often spend time in the office of the Archduke. It was surprising how closer they became to each other. But they are a married couple, and it was quite natural. It would be strange if they lived separately. At the same time, Elizabeth, drinking tea, decided to ask the Archduke whether they became at least a little closer with him. Earlier, Mrs. Pettinson said that she should already have a stomach, but it is not visible because it is thin, but still it will be necessary to contact, because it will be better if she sews dresses in advance. Then they will save time. The girl thought that if this man simply hugged her, she would not be so worried about such a little thing. Get in the head, she asked herself to be true for her to pounce on him, like some kind of animal. While Eliza was thinking about this, he did not notice how the Rajate approached her and called out to her, because of which she shuddered. He asked if she had a nightmare again at night, because he heard that she couldn't even have breakfast normally. Looking that there was no face on her, the man suggested that she again dreamed of the emperor, and this is not the first time. That day, it seems, she began to sleep better after that magic came out of her, but the dream is still not calm. Outwardly, he sees nothing like that on her body, but some circles or signs can be hidden deeper on the body. The man asked himself if he would have to undress her to find something, after which he fixed his gaze on the neckline. Suddenly, Eliza asked, "This is all due to the fact that she insisted on walking on the castle on her own, or that in the end Sir Reuben showed her him. Perhaps this is because there are so many beautiful women here." Reget did not understand what was going on, but he answered that he did not know how everywhere, but such a person is sitting in front of him now. The princess was embarrassed, saying that she should not be cunning every time, because of this she could not say anything. After all, he must understand that for her this is a matter of life and death, but still pretends to be trifles. She remembered his reaction to her body. Ask for himself. Does he not want her? Because his body spoke about it. He said that he did not want to hug the way she, but then behaved very strangely and did not explain it. Now he pretends that he does not want anything, and every time she encourages her, so she asked to say honestly whether he wants to do this with her. Elizabeth decided to find out everything directly, not trying to get from the rear. Without waiting for an answer, the princess rushed forward and hugged him, saying that this was a clear violation of the contract. Reget asked in which place, to which he received the answer that they had agreed to cooperate with each other. They had an agreement that if there were suitable conditions, then they would do this, but nothing happened. To convince her, he will have to come up with a more good reason than phrases that they need to become closer. The girl lowered her head, adding that, not that she does not agree with his opinion, but soon everyone will be clear to everyone. Elizabeth allegedly accidentally touched his groin, thinking that even now he reacts to her as necessary. Having acquired it, she was thinking right now to drag him into bed, and not to let him escape somewhere. Then she pulled away, said that she wanted to be polite, but he stubbornly continues to not hear her. She also does not want to do this with someone who does not like it, although someone can do this to achieve something. But she has her to taste, so now she has nothing against sharing the bed with him. When she finished, she immediately turned her head off, as she became embarrassed and ashamed. But the girl was waiting for the answer. Having heard nothing, she stated that she would go because she would come soon, but the man stopped her and pressed her to the table. Then he said that in fact, he could not even think about this, after which he felt Eliza tremble. Touching her hair, he added that if she really thinks so, then they can try something. The girl began to stutter when she felt the Duke's hands began to slowly unfasten her dress. When he began to kiss her in the neck, he said that they would look at the very same conditions that cannot be avoided. While Elizabeth enjoyed kisses and asked to wait, Reget found a magic circle on the left shoulder blade. But it seemed to him that there were also others. But he had too little time to find them all at once. Even if this is a brother's sign, it is still unpleasant. But now it was necessary to find all the magic circles. Meanwhile, Eliza asked to be even closer to her and demanded kisses, but the Archduke was busy with other thoughts. The girl called him again, because of which the man came to her senses, after which the princess began to kiss again. When she closed her eyes with pleasure, the Reget noticed that his dragon's hand was immediately constrained by chains. The strength of the dragon, enclosed in the human body, breaks through in the appearance of the dragon when he loses control. He asked himself how to allow such a terrible force to break this fragile and defenseless body. The man asked if she was in order. Eliza replied that in order, simultaneously asking why he stopped. Reget replied that it seems to him, he found, the very inevitable condition. But the girl did not understand what it was about. Looking at her neck, on which the bruises were, he concluded that he had left his marks on magic circles. Then he said that she still needed to gain weight, so that her body was rounded, and she began to resemble a pregnant woman. It seems to be enough 20 pounds, but Elizabeth still did not understand why he so sharply changed the subject of the conversation. A little later, Ixa noticed marks, said that soon bruises will definitely appear in these places. Elizabeth replied that everything was in order, because the main thing is that she had nothing broken, but her thoughts were about something else. He clearly made him stop. Most likely it was because of the dragon's strength that was sealed in him. Then she sighed. Mentally ask yourself whether she can dial 20 pounds in a short period of time. Ivesta said worriedly that it seems that it is still better to call her doctor Asking to wait a bit, Eliza replied that she would not die of this, because the blood of the dragon could never harm the descendants of Galeon. Such was the covenant and the ban between the teacher and the student, and this rule is not able to dispel or cancel. But perhaps there was a promise between lovers, but she will never know the exact answer. Meanwhile, at the other end of the continent, the man defeated the room, cursing on the rulers of Argon. The first prince is the Angle, Rihan, hit the table, said that the twins were the same right up to tricks and flight. When asked what happened to the emperor, the third prince Hanan replied that he also wanted to know how he could disappear, and how this could happen if he certainly broke his tendon on the ankle and dangled his eyes. Rihan said that if they want to get a dragon magic, they will need the power of Emperor Argon. After all, it was said that you need to catch the princess and use it as a bait. But this plan failed. This idiot only brought down the anger of Banella, and why it was necessary to climb to the semi-Prakon when he was angry. Hanan suggested that his brother begin to dissolve false rumors. Then perhaps they will be able to lure the girl. You can start gossip that the princess uses magic. Besides, she clearly hides something from everyone. Having lowered his head, the first principal thought about this proposal, deciding only that it was so. After all, otherwise why should the emperor treat his sister so carefully? After these words, he made the final decision. It is necessary to let the rumors among people that the princess with the help of magic escaped from the archduke and was caught by them. If Hanan is right, it is even a escaped emperor to believe these rumors, after which he will come out. He will not stand aside, while his beloved sister is subjected to severe treatment from him. And during the year, they must catch their brother and sister and force them to be inclined before Angle, recognizing them by the hosts. The next day, the servant brought them the treats that they ordered to do. There were various sweets. Reget, not being distracted from the book, asked them to leave everything and leave. The maids bowed, heading for the exit. The man asked Eliza to stop at them just to look. You need to eat, and then she could go to her room. The girl pushed him a plate, offering to eat together, but the Archduke replied that he did not really like sweets. Elizabeth asked what he likes then, because it seems to her that he does not like everything connected with her. Having made the first piece, the girl sadly said that if she was unpleasant for him, then he should just say that. Suddenly, her eyes widened when she felt how tasty these dishes were, and began to eat. Reget grinned, sometimes raising his eyes to look at how his wife enjoys food. Toward evening, Elizabeth sat near the mirror, with a pen in her hand, peering into her body in order to miss anything. In front of her lay several scribbled and painted, with different symbols of pieces of paper with notes. Then she began to double-check everything, saying aloud that the label is on her left shoulder, as well as on an ankle. The latter was on the spine. These are magic circles that Andre tried so hard for her. However, she could not understand what kind of magic it was, unable to find anything in books or any other sources. This is probably one of what Galiana taught Semicete. At the same moment, the seal on the sheet began to shine. After a couple of seconds, she went out, and Elizabeth tried to understand what she had just done to happen. Thinking, she aloud said the name of the Semicete, after which the glow repeated, surprising the girl. But this time, magic was activated on its spine, but magic showed no more effect. Elizabeth realized that the dragon's name activated the magic circle, but it was not clear what kind of magic it was. The Semicete burned a half-consentant and carried away hundreds of thousands of innocent people, but could not get rid of one. Galeon, who left her, decided not to take risks, escaping from the anger of the dragon, choosing a safer way. But instead, she imposed a curse that her beloved student could not forget her name until his death. Her first student and new Grandel hero, whenever he uses his strength, will feel a curse. He will recall the name of his mentor, and from now on, he will not be able to be free from each other. The Semicete cannot harm Galeon, and Galeon cannot forget the name of the Semicete. All this is like a vicious circle. Then Elizabeth decided that it was necessary to follow this circle, because it is not known how he would behave in the future. If she can use magic, then perhaps it is not necessary for her to give birth to a child, which is fundamentally changing plans. This can be useful to her when escaping, but you should not rely on magic, which is practically unknown. Then she began to feel her side, asking herself if she gained weight, because it seems that this will be enough. If she breaks now, whether she will be kicked out. At the same second, A man who entered the room asked who would be kicked out. The Herzog, pulling on gloves, decided to clarify who would expel her, because he did not understand what she was talking about. Elizabeth shuddered when she realized that the Reget came to her, because she began to answer his questions unconsciously. The man came closer to her, after which he returned the cloak to his shoulders, thereby confusing her a little. Elizabeth sharply turned away from him, embarrassed to ask what brought him here, since he appeared unexpectedly. The man lowered his head, asking longing, not going to behave so coldly when he is next to her. Having embarrassed, Elizabeth gave a negative answer, asking if he went on purpose, in the form that she was doing this. After all, judging by how he said this, everything is so, but she was not going to take off her clothes to show. Suddenly, she froze, thinking that this could be a good opportunity, after which she decided to change the tactics. She said that he could see everything himself now, and it was time to check if she gained weight. The girl looked at him with an innocent look, asked if he agrees, trying to seduce in this way. Clutching him, the princess clarified that he needed to see it with his own eyes, but the Reget was in no hurry. Returning her cape to her place, the man replied that he did not have to personally check this out, because he has a doctor. Every day he sends her medical indicators. Eliza was surprised that her weight was also indicated there. The Archduke said that this is certainly, in response to which he received an almost sobbing girl who was in shock. Then she turned away again, saying that he was just a terrible person, since he was so calm about such things. With such his behavior, they will never be able to do this, because of which their entire contract can burn. Reget threw his jacket over her, hearing in response that it was unlikely to cheer her up, but he knew about it. The man began to kiss her in the neck, asking not to be angry with him. The girl was stunned for a second from this. Bruttered, she replied that it doesn't matter whether she was angry or not. He still would not even blink his eyes about this. Suddenly, the Archduke said that he would not be hearing this for some time. Eliza fell silent for a few seconds. She thought he was so sweet, only because he was going to tell this unpleasant news. When asked, what is the reason, Reget replied that his riot cycle is usually every 4 months. When the insanity of the semi-pranakon manifests itself, it cannot see it, but it will take no more than 10 days. The girl decided to change the subject, saying that he had previously said that he would definitely do this when she gains weight. The Reget replied that it was impossible to quickly dial 20 pounds. Therefore, until it should eat properly. She should have a little extra time to carefully monitor the figure without his direct participation. He also asked her to sleep well and rest a lot, so that her health would continue to return to normal. If she wants to get out of the castle, he must definitely hide her face, and also take someone accompanied. This man continues to break the promise and encourage her, but she pretends to be all right. However, this introduces it into despair, and if it continues to continue, she will have to find another way. But despite the fact that she understands this, in the end she does nothing. In the end, it presses even more on her. Her heart pounded when she asked herself that if, when autumn arrives, she would not want to leave here. And suddenly, she said that if he was not going to be sweet with her in the fall, then let not behave like that. He once said that she was a person who knows nothing about this world, that she is easy to confuse and deceive. If she showed her just a small glimpse of the light of a good relationship, for him, everything will be painted in this light. It seems to her that he always forgets about their contract, trying to avoid his direct duties as a husband. After all, if it weren't for her, the emperor would have reminded him of the heir for years. But now this problem is not. It is not only about her life. She also wants to help him with everything he can, but he stubbornly refuses. The girl added that she also wants to learn more about him. Hearing this, the man was sincerely surprised at her speeches. He wanted to ask again, but Elizabeth replied that there was no need to say that he did not hear something, because this is not so. She asked him to return soon and keep his promise, and Reget thought that this girl was like a fox. It doesn't matter who she is, but she was clearly born in order to fascinate other people with her beauty. Having lowered his head, the Archduke realized that he was finally disappeared, because you could no longer live without this girl. At this time, Elizabeth, taking his hand tightly, worriedly asked him to be extremely careful. The man agreed, after which he stated that he would return soon, so she would not have to wait too long. 2 days passed when the Reget left the castle. during which time nothing interesting happened. Everything was quite common. Suddenly, Ixa came to Elizabeth, announcing that the guest had arrived, although the girl did not expect anyone. The maid explained that it was Miss from the Duke of Irian's family. Eliza was heard about her, but was not familiar personally. She said that she came by order of His Majesty the Emperor, so they had no right to refuse her. Thus, an uninvited guest arrived in Rotiro, who was now sitting in the living room and was waiting for the mistress of the castle. When the girl, accompanied by Pettinson, entered the living room, the guest said that they were glad that they met. The blonde in a beautiful dress, which was called Irene, who was sitting in front of her, said that she was pleased to meet. Looking at her, Elizabeth asked herself why she did not feel a drop of politeness in relation to this woman. Some time ago, she asked the main maid whether to meet the guest, having received an affirmative answer. Mrs. Pettinson explained that she arrived on the orders of His Majesty, and she was held in the living room, where she was waiting. The princess was immediately nervous, saying that she did not even know her, so she would be uncomfortable in her company. The maid explained that Miss is 23 years old. She is the only daughter of the Duke Irene, a close associate of the Emperor. And also, this Miss Majesty for several years has strongly recommended the title of Erzherzogini. When the girl heard this, she immediately froze, realizing that perhaps this woman is her main rival. Despite the fact that His Excellency categorically refused, she still comes to Rotiro every year. This is already an annual tradition, Eliza replied, that under the roof of this castle he has here and so full of women. After all, she herself told her, so that the women whom the Emperor sent remain in the castle as maids. And suddenly, Mrs. Pettinson asked if she was going to continue to suffer from the stigma of Erzherzogini. The woman does not know what kind of opinion about herself, but do not forget that she is Erzherzogini, and this is not just a word. After all, she has exactly the same powers as the Archduke, and this gives her a huge number of opportunities. And now, Irene said that she had already said that she was glad to get acquainted, but for some reason, there was no answer. She decided that this was all because of the title of the princess, but Elizabeth replied that she was also glad to meet her. However, Eliza decided to use all her powers, saying with a smile that she was welcoming her in Retiro. The guest explained that Banella needs to follow the rules, but it seems that she is still like a white sheet. At first, Elizabeth guiltily lowered her eyes, explaining that she had to be polite, but her behavior immediately changed. But since she did not get up when the hostess entered the room, she decided that you could lower manners and politeness. A malicious smirk appeared on Irene's face when she was surprised to reply that Eliza was a very interesting person. Suddenly, Mrs. Pettinson bowed, explaining Miss that Her Highness was still at the stage of adaptation. In addition, Her Highness did everything correctly from the point of view of her status in Banella, so everything is in order. Irene remembered that she was Erzherzogin. Then she would speak with her appropriately, on an equal footing. Then she put the Emperor's decree on the table, so she can look at him until the Erzduke is not in place. Meanwhile, she will remain in the castle until they give an answer to the decree, because her duty is to wait for the answer. Then the guest asked the main maid if she could go to the room in which she usually remains. The woman bowed low, responding with respect that she would send people who will quickly prepare everything for her. At that moment, Elizabeth began to open the parchment in order to closely get acquainted with the decree of the Emperor. It says that last fall, the size of Danny Retiro is significantly different from previous years. 3 servants were in the office of the Archduke, and now they were surprised to answer Eliza that this could not be. The bus immediately said that about last fall, the Archduke was absent in the estate, because he was in war. Therefore, they paid attention to reports more than ever. Moreover, they were as attentive as possible. Alfredo confirmed that they also made a report on the accounting department and immediately sent him to the Archduke with a letter. Studying the papers, the girl, frowning, asked why the amounts were different if the Archduke himself checked the documents. The bus suggested that someone stole a tribute, leaving from Rotiro to the imperial castle, because this may well be. Usually, solving such problems are necessary from the inside, so a thorough investigation will need to be carried out. All managers in Rotiro are proven people. The Archduke himself claims them, so they are better off starting with newcomers. Hearing this, Elizabeth decided to ask if they know why Argan lost a full-scale Angle war. Someone from the close circle of her brother, that is, the Emperor, informed the enemy's side of the tactics and strategy of Argon. By this, she wanted to say that the main thing is not to ignore the fact that the traitor can also be among her. The three main subordinates bowed low, answering that they would keep this in mind and will be on his guard. Alfredo asked if she could not, or, for a start, once again check the report that they made with a collected. After that, they put several high piles with papers, explaining that they would be able to find the culprit. Elizabeth was dumbfounded that she would need to do such a mountain of work alone to find a gap. Meanwhile, Irene asked how long the princess has been living in the castle. The maid replied that about a month and a half. He will hear this. A cunning smile appeared on the girl's face when she thought that she was worth watching a little. One morning, far from Rotiro, somewhere in the wasteland, there was a lonely tent, and two knights hid nearby. One of them suggested that the Archduke calm down, but the other replied that the hand had not returned to the usual state, and if he wants to stay alive, then it is better not to approach him now until the riot finally subsides. The next morning, Elizabeth sat at the table, saying that she sees absolutely no reason in this. She remembered how yesterday she was told that they were going to report on everything that had happened. However, they decided that it would be better if now she is dealing with this issue, having reviewed all the documents. The college clarified that if the Archduke finds out, then it will definitely not end with good, because they know his harsh temper. He added that His Highness, and so all week after returning, some very sensitive and gloomy. Alfredo said that in this state he was able to turn his neck before they have time to explain something to him. Eliza asked Pettinson if it was true to what the woman replied, that sometimes he made radical decisions. However, it seems to the girl that he is not one of those people, but the maid clarified that he behaves differently with her. Be that as it may, she also believes that this question is better to deal with her while there is such an opportunity. If the Archduke takes this business, unnecessary sacrifices that they can avoid can follow. If she agrees, he will be able to write a short letter about the whole Erzherzog. Perhaps then he will listen to her. And now the girl pissed over the letter, once again crumpled and throwing off the soiled sheet of paper. Putting her head on the table, she desperately stated that she had to write a letter, but still did not work. Then she wondered if a man would return earlier if she wrote him, saying that she was waiting for his return. Elizabeth decided to return to writing, when suddenly a man came up to her, loudly slapping his hands on the table. She shuddered when she heard a sharp question. Irene about whether she writes to her husband now, wanting to see him as soon as possible. Then she explained that if an official letter, then you need to write a name and title, as well as show politeness. After all, if she speaks with her so disrespectful, it does not mean that she should be rude to the Archduke. Elizabeth suggested that these two are often corresponded, and she advises to show politeness in the letter. She remembered how Reget said that now he was rarely called by name, but before that, he did not even need a name. Shooting her head, Eliza decided that this does not concern her, because now she has much more important things than it. Looking at Irene, she decided that it was not the time for confusion, because if she was like it, she would be on the same level. The guest noticed her gaze, calling her out with dissatisfaction, but did not receive absolutely any answer. Unable to stand it, the girl asked why she was looking at her so compassionately, but Eliza did not answer again. Irene smiled, said that she was behaving so noble, although she herself sold her body to survive. Rising sharply from her place, Elizabeth sternly stated that she would like her to leave at the end of the affairs. However, this did not scare the blonde, who also jumped up from her place, issuing a rather loud laugh. Then she went to the princess, grabbing her hand and asking how long she could remain so proud. After all, for sure, it seems to her that the whole world belongs to her, since the Archduke sunk on her. But this is far from the case. Elizabeth calmly replied that she would like this to be true, but now they would not know about it. Such an answer made Irene smile wider, after which she replied that she could not communicate with her like this. The princess replied that if she continues to allow herself rudeness, she would call one of the servants. Suddenly, the guest fixed her gaze at the princess, answering that this was a tempting idea, and invited her to try. Clutching her hand even more, the girl said that then she would tell her all her secrets to the one who would go through the doors. Eliza tried to understand what she was talking about, but in fact, in her expression, she herself understood everything perfectly. Irene touched her belly, asking to look at it, because she claimed that she was pregnant, proving this to everyone. Elizabeth shuddered when she heard the question, why then she was still so thin within such a time. It seems that about 3 months have already passed since pregnancy, but for some reason this is not at all visible. With a malicious smile, Irene, as if specially asked how to be so slim in some period. Then she asked how the Reget fuse on the woman if he had many trophies, preferring to look at them. From this, even a mongrel would laugh, because those who know him are sure that he would never have done so. Eliza replied that she would understand what would happen if she had lived as a high-ranking woman all her life. In this case, she would have grown up with a stupid idiot who could not even understand what and what, like Irene is now. Therefore, it seems that she does not realize all the scale of the situation, and right now brazenly climbs into her business. Such a statement caused a laugh at Irene, who could not believe that Eliza was in something good in this life. Then she whispered in her ear that if she returned to the castle, will tell everything herself, they would immediately chop off her head. Having started, Elizabeth moved away from her, asking what she wants, realizing that she will have to fulfill her requirements. However, this brought the pleasure of Irene, who replied that she wanted her not to build herself archduke. She then added that, unfortunately, it is likely that the child can be born half a dragon, but she must give birth, as she planned, because it will be even better if she gives birth to 2 or 3 children, so that when she became Erzdukskin, she did not have to take the birth of heirs, because this will do Eliza. A few days later, Ivessa almost constantly asked the princess if she was all right. The maid noticed that after the arrival of Miss, she feels bad now for several days. Eliza remembered how Irene said that there are people in this castle who know her secret. But that's not all. She can find out who specifically in a couple of days. But the question is, forgive the 3 emperor of her accomplices in lies. The girl thought that she needed to write something in the contract about those who knew about her secret, but it's too late. I will have to behave flexible with her, and Ivesta noticed that this is already the 8th day, as her husband was absent. It seems that he needs to return sooner, so that she again feels calmly, as it was before his departure. Having lowered her head, Elizabeth replied that at such moments it would be better. Be near, and she would be calmer. That night, the girl had another restless dream, during which her brother appeared, calling her. Opening her eyes, Eliza noticed Andre with a bandaged eye, which shouted that she should urgently get away from him. The guy hugged his sister, that the descendant of Gallian could not love the child of the Semicites, and she knows very well about it. She needs to leave until the feeling began to be stronger, and she should not allow these unrequited emotions to absorb herself. But most importantly, she should not allow him to steal her magic. Otherwise, the protection that he invests will collapse. In the end, he stated that she should do this until he came after her, after which she woke up. Breathing heavily, the girl raised herself. She said aloud his name, saying that she knew all this, but does not quite understand. After all, she cannot just get out of here, and now she just wants the Reget to return to her as quickly as possible. At the same time, Reuben watched how the Archduke read a letter, asking if something happened to Rotiro. Studying a piece of paper, the man calmly replied that it seems that an uninvited guest came at the wrong time. The knight at first did not understand who was talking about, after which he suggested that it was Lady Irene from the Duke's family. The letter also said that the person who stole a tribute is hidden in Rotiro, so you need to find a criminal. His eyes opened when he saw that his wife was very hoping that he would soon return to her intact. The man suggested that she was worried about something, remembered how she asked to keep her promise to return. Then she added to remember that in Rotiro she had no place without him, because of which she would be very lonely. The Archduke concluded that now is not the time for his madness, because things have appeared much more important than his cycle. After that, he ordered Reuben to go and bring the horse, because he needed to immediately go back to Rotiro. When dinner was covered, Mrs. Pettinson said that they were told that His Highness left early in the morning. Most likely, he will come closer to midnight. This message was given so that she would not wait and immediately go to bed. The woman asked to finish early with work and go to rest, as she does not look more because of work. Irene was adjusted into the conversation, confirming that she does not look like several times a day, thereby provoking Eliza. With a malicious smirk, the guest invited the princess to have a little more fun in order to dispel boredom in this hall. If they are bored with yours, maybe she wants to call her personal maid in order to have fun to talk about the three of them. At that very moment, Elizabeth turned to the senior maid, saying that she would spend some more time with Miss. The woman wanted to resist, but the princess with a smile and asked that she could not leave them alone. Pouring wine into a glass, Irene said that since she was not pregnant, then she could drink without harm to her health. Seeing a glass in front of her, Eliza replied that she did not like alcohol, but she said that she had no choice. Suddenly, the princess that Irene said that she wanted her to give birth. Then the expression on the guest's face changed. She was surprised when the hostess of the castle began to pour wine on the table, saying that it was better not to offer it. If she can drink a glass of wine or a whole box and wake up the next day in health, then it will just kill it. A smile reappeared on the face of Irene when she agreed, offering to talk about something interesting. She decided to ask about her personal life, asking whether this man is gentle towards her. Without waiting for an answer, she, in addition, asked if they were already sleeping. This question made Elizabeth startle. After a few seconds, the girl replied that this was not her business, and she should not ask such questions. Getting up, she added that if she was not going to run to the emperor and blame her, then let her not provoke. She is already very patient with her. If she needs something, then she needs to treat her in this way. In response to this, Irene asked if everything was because she could get pregnant and escape without giving birth to a child. Elizabeth was shocked that she knew about it, and she added that she was still about to escape. After all, she knows that Princess Argan, who has lost her homeland, is not ready to live in Rotiro until the end of her life. But what if the Erzberg finds out about it? Whether he will leave everything as it is, she is quite likely. She is afraid of this most. Eliza remembered how Reget said that she could leave at any moment, so she stated that it does not matter. Therefore, she thinks that he remembers his words that she could escape. These words made Irene startle. She could not believe that the Archduke personally said this, not expecting him to approve the fact of her escape in the future. The blonde laughed. Thanks for what it is, adding that each time it becomes even more interesting. He himself told her this, but she did not hear this. Then Eliza thought that there really was something between them. Squeezing the dress, she thought with horror that perhaps they were lovers, and even slept, enjoying each other. Approaching Eliza, Irene said that it seems that he treats her in a special way because she was a princess. Clutching the girl's shoulder, she added that if she had not been a princess, he would have killed at the first meeting. Elizabeth asked not to slander him, at least for her. He was the most merciful person of Banella. With a smile on her face, the blonde replied that it seems that she was deeply mistaken in this, because she does not know everything. Then she began to think about telling about some quality of the Reget, which the princess did not know about. The etymology of the Kristan clan, given by the emperor in an ancient language, means worshipping. He obeys nobles. He is merciful with them and inspires confidence in them, as if he was ready to give the whole world, so he behaved with many. And thus, he misleads people, pretending that he is a hero who bears only good. Getting angry, she asked how he dares, a half-grocery, to sit on the heads of other people and let dust in the eyes. But the power lurking in it is so attractive, and Rotiro is the most blessed land in the north. Therefore, she wants to take at least this surname for herself, so Elizabeth should give birth to only one child. And when she gives it to her, Irene will be condescending and will allow the princess to go back to his homeland. Elizabeth could not believe these words, but Irene added that the Imperial Guard would visit her in the fall. In addition to the fact that she will be in danger, the doctor who examined her and her personal maid is no exception, and all those except the Archduke who helped her in Rotiro will be directly executed for the deceit of His Majesty. It is unlikely that the Rajate will save her, and then will throw his power to the feudal lord for the sake of trophy, which has lost its brilliance. She should accept her hand because she knows that she, more than anything, wants to get home. In response to this, Elizabeth decided to ask why she suddenly changed her attitude, offering something similar. Irene replied that the Reget would come. Her help will also come in handy if she wants to get out of here alive. She has already said that she would bring up a child who she will give birth, after which he will help to return. This is a great deal. At that very moment, Elizabeth replied that she did not trust her, because Miss definitely has some kind of selfish and hidden motive. Suddenly, Mrs. Pettinson prevented their conversation, bowing and announcing that His Highness had arrived. Iron sighed, and with a displeased look, stated that he had arrived earlier than midnight, although he promised completely different. After that, she asked Eliza to think about her offer, and not to run to her husband, telling about their conversation. She also needs to think well whose life is truly under threat, not counting her own. Meanwhile, standing near the stable, Reuben asked why they drove the horse like that, because he would be sick now. The Reget did not answer, instead turned his head, noticing Elizabeth quickly running in his direction. However, contrary to expectation, the girl rushed past the man, hugged the horse, and affectionately stroking her. She began to question the animal, whether everything is fine with him, after which he began to inspect him for the presence of wounds. At that very moment, the Erzherzog said, turning to his wife, who decided to pay more attention to his horse. When he approached her, he said that she had to first tell him this, worried about his health. Then the man began to drive a dissatisfied horse, saying that he had already heard pleasant things to himself. When the horse headed to the stable, the Archduke asked why she was not sleeping at such a time. Not hearing the answer, he gently touched her cheeks, asking if she was in order, because of which the girl shuddered. Having embarrassed, she turned her head away, answering that she did not know what he had in mind, but she was in perfect order. Suddenly, the Regete took the curls of her hair, after which he began to sniff him, saying that he was hearing the smell of alcohol. Elizabeth blushed, after which she began to dismiss, saying that she did not drink alcohol and would not touch it. Then she staggered, said that people were waiting for him in the office, so he should go, and she had already seen him. Before the girl had time to move away, she felt that the man abruptly grabbed her in his arms, not wanting to let her go. Elizabeth said that too many people were looking at them, but the Reget replied that they did not see them for the first time. However, the girl explained that she was not about that, because now he carries her in her arms, thereby demonstrating it. Walking along the corridor, Irene suddenly blocked the path, who, noticing Reget, said that they had not seen each other for a long time. With a satisfied smile, the girl called him her knight, hoping that the man would somehow respond to this. However, the Archduke with a stone face only concluded that he found the one who drank alcohol with his wife. Irene asked if he really doesn't even have the spirit to greet her beautifully, as it should be in Banella. The man with an indifferent look apologized to her for the fact that it looked like he was not happy to see her. In response, the guest suggested that they are really a couple, because the style of the conversation is the same. At this time, Elizabeth felt that the atmosphere between them was not the way she thought, and perhaps she was mistaken. Having waved a fan, Irene closed her eyes, saying that she already knew very well how he treats her. Reget replied that he was glad that she understands everything, and it seems that he would not need to change for such rudeness. The blonde goodbye told Eliza that they would definitely see tomorrow to have a time just as well. Suddenly, the Archduke asked not to listen to her, and to concentrate only on his voice, not paying attention to her. Meanwhile, an evil smile flashed on her face when she realized that everything was going clearly according to her plan. 10 minutes later, being in the room, Reget suggested that they spent quite a lot of time with Miss Irene. He believed that her society was tired of Eliza, as he knew that she was not a very pleasant person, especially for his wife. When asked why he was late, the man replied that this time everything took more time, and each time in different ways. It is forbidden to extraneous entry here. This is its oversight. Soon Miss will be taken away from here, so it may not worry. Elizabeth decided to say directly that she heard that he was at the stage of discussing a marriage with this girl. Reget replied that it was a long time, and he did not remember anything, but Eliza clarified that 3 years, not so long ago. She added that she heard that Miss was very annoying, so it thought if she did not look like her. Taking her leg, the man replied that there is nothing in common between them, rather, on the contrary, the complete opposite. When he decided to take off her shoes, the girl said that he would call Eliza, but the Reget said that he would do it himself. Elizabeth blushed, answering that it was time for him to go, because the college is waiting for him in the office to discuss business. The man replied that she wanted him to arrive earlier, and as soon as he made sure that he had arrived, that's all. Having removed the shoe, he added that he expected this, and not what was in a hurry. She just does what repels him. Although he expected that upon arrival, she would meet him in a completely different way. Now her behavior is surprising. At that very moment, the girl sighed when the man kissed her leg, thereby driving her into the paint. She shuddered, realizing that he was thinking about her, although she thought that everything was completely different. Suddenly, the Reget said that it still does not look like that, so you need to call a doctor for examination. I ignored this proposal. Elizabeth said she was missing him, thereby very surprising the man. The next second, she rushed to his arms, while the Archduke still could not move away from shock. She asked the next time to take her with her. She did not want to be left here alone, because she was very difficult. The girl shuddered, felt his arms, after which the man replied that he would do that. A little later, the Archduke was in his office, hearing the question of whether he would find time to talk to her. The incoming Irene added that she could hardly fall asleep after such an unfriendly greeting on his part. After 5 minutes, they sat in front of each other, drinking tea, but none of them first started the conversation. The man remembered how Mrs. Pettinson recently came to him, saying that Miss revealed the secret of the princess. When asked by Reget, the woman replied that this was a secret, which most likely even Her Highness hid from him. The point was that it was not pregnant, and Her Highness looked very bad after meeting with Miss. The man thought that if now he kills this woman in the face of Irene, then this would definitely reach the ears of Eliza. It was necessary to deal with her even earlier, but he did not know that this whole situation would lead to such consequences. Having a sip of tea, the blonde with a smile asked if he was thinking right now about whether to kill her or not. Then she asked if he wanted to kill someone in the castle when his precious Erzherzogin was sleeping peacefully in his room. Reget replied that she constantly affects her, but he would prefer that she would no longer do this. With a smile on her face, the girl suggested that he really decided to behave like a husband, which looked funny. She thought that only that crazy princess has a curved idea of the situation, but this is not so. In addition, the gaze of the Erzherzog is very strange, and looks like right now it will tear her apart. The girl said that, be that as it may, he needed to be careful. The man asked what she had in mind. She noticed that he was interested in this woman, and it seems even the princess herself was not aware of this. But is the princess not looking for a way to escape from here? And does he think that she can forever stay in Rotiro? Reget decided to ask if Elizabeth herself told her about this. Irene replied that she might say that. Then the man asked the following question if she thought why he was still looking after her. He specified that this was due to what happened 3 years ago. Hearing this, the blonde shuddered and grimaced. For the sake of her honor, he holds his mouth on the castle and gives her a concession, because he understands how she should be awkward. And if not for the case, he would have kicked her out for a long time. Such a statement was seriously angry with the interlocutor. She remembered how 3 years ago he asked him if he thought she was the most beautiful in Banella. Hearing an affirmative answer, whether he remained such an opinion, even after all the women he had seen. The man agreed again, but Irene was not enough, and she had to make sure that he was not lying. He turned into his head in her direction. He stated that it makes no sense to lie to her, so now he was absolutely sincere. After a while, Pettinson said that it was better for her not to approach the Duke when he is in a fury. During this period, His Highness awakens not an intimate desire, as she could think, but the desire to kill. And now the blonde asked what then, now, whether she looks in his eyes with a crazy girl. Not hearing the answer, she said that it doesn't matter, because she still craves this place called Rotiro. In addition, she still wants him to be near her, like a faithful and loving knight next to her girlfriend. In response to this, the man said that she still lives with illusions, completely forgetting about the realities of this world. Irene said that she just wanted to see how he would spend his whole life alone, without her. After that, she got up from her seat, saying that today she would be the first to go to breathe fresh air. When the girl came out, a curve and a smirk appeared on her face, after which she stated that she felt terrible. 3 years ago, Reget politely asked her no longer to do such rash acts next to him. After all, if it alarms the pranks, it will end badly for both sides, and the consequences can be terrible. A grimace of anger appeared on Irene's face when she asked herself how he could love, because he is not even a man. Then she promised that no one in life could love him, and she would certainly do everything for this. When the night came, the Reget came to Elizabeth's room, noticing his wife, who had already fallen asleep with a strong sleep. As soon as he came up, the girl began to say that she was missing, after which she asked Andre to take her from here. Unable to stand this picture, he sat on the edge of the bed, asking her to see who is sitting in front of her now. After that, he held out his hand, starting to pour his magic into it in order to block Andre access to her dreams. At that very moment, Elizabeth woke up when she saw Reget in front of her, and having heard the question of whom she now needs. Hanging over a sleepy girl, the man continued to ask who she needed, hoping to hear his name. In midday, she replied that she had already said that she wished him, after which the man squeezed her shoulder with force. When Elizabeth stated that she was painful, Reget apologized, thought that all attempts to pacify the fury were useless. Suddenly, his eyes widened when he felt that the newly sleeping girl pressed against his chest. Clutching her to him, the man asked if Emperor Argan was coming to her in a dream. She answered in the affirmative. After that, he again began to nourish her with magic, thinking that no matter how hard he tried, it is impossible to get rid of him. Then we learned that no one could penetrate the world of twins, surrounded by a strong wall of their connection. But suddenly, he felt that he wanted to destroy this world, and should do it, no matter what it costs him. The traces you are engraved on this small body cannot be erased even by the power of the dragon. But this is not a misfortune. In this case, if it is impossible to completely get rid of them, perhaps then he should leave his tracks. As soon as he finished, he sat on the edge of the bed, putting his hand on his face, and thinking that he was really a madman. He is definitely crazy, because otherwise, even if he manages to go through all this, horror awaits him. But he still does not want someone like him to be born to this light, even if this is the desire of the Emperor. But what if the Emperor Argan is really alive? And that if Elizabeth finds out about this, but sooner or later it will happen, he will not be able to put on shackles on her and keep it near him, as this will be more like slavery. The girl, he said that, judging by which direction his thoughts go, she really captivated him. After that, he got out of bed and froze, paying attention to sheets of paper, painted with magic circles. Taking one of them, he began to carefully study him, recognizing the signs. The same were applied to the body of Eliza. Meanwhile, in the southeastern part of the mainland Grandel, there was a Rios castle, owned by the royal family of Regal. The old man, descending the stairs, said that the king and princes Regal safely went on the road. The king conveyed so that he would not worry about wires. He said more than once that he would focus on recovery. The Duke of the Empire Argan, Fabian, asked His Majesty not to worry. Now there are more important problems. He later said that the Duke of Conrad followed the trail of the princess to the Ten River, but the trace broke off. However, there is nothing to worry about, because they are trying to find a way to inform Her Highness that he is still alive. Andre suggested that the Archduke must continue to attempt to erase the magic circle from the body of Elizabeth. But, be that as it may, their connection with Eliza cannot be torn. He specially inflicted circles that not only to notice. Although, if it were so, Eliza was unlikely to be in order now, and he could not come to her in a dream. Then the guy stated that it seems that the owner of Rotiro is kind to his sister, which was very surprised at him. At least, it does not seem that he wants to harm her, for example, to allow rudeness or force her to something. He remembered how the girl said that she wanted the Archduke. He returned to her as quickly as possible. Then he said that in another case, Eliza would not rely on him so much, since he could not live without him. Fabian said that she would not give her heart so easy for her enemy, and not just agreed to marriage. Andre replied that it was because he told her to survive at all costs, and that was her only way. But, as he said, the place of Princess Argan is not Rotiro at all, and therefore it is necessary to pull it out. In addition, after his death, Eliza will become the owner of Argan and will be the only sorceress on the continent. The guy turned, with a serious look that therefore, she needs to be taken away from there at all costs, until it is too late. The next day, during the meal, the Reget looked through the documents, and Eliza asked if he was angry with her. Without looking up from the papers, the man asked how he could not be angry. The girl immediately wondered why. At that very moment, he touched her forehead, answering that she still had a slight temperature, then surprised her. When he came to her, she was so sleepy that she could not even come into consciousness, although he woke her. Bruttered, Elizabeth replied that it was often with her in Argan, so he should not be surprised at this. Reget said that as soon as he managed to restore her condition, when suddenly she gets sick again, Eliza apologized, saying that she needed a little more time to pay attention to her health. The man replied that he said this was not to listen to her apologies, because he wants to see the result. The girl pouted, thought that every time he told her not to apologize with such an expression, and it was tired. Then she decided to change the subject, asking if he managed to catch the culprit who intercepted tribute. He replied that he hadn't even started doing this. Eliza was surprised, because 4 days had passed since his arrival. Reget replied that he was upset because of her condition, but whether she was asking, because she really does not understand. Elizabeth was unhappy with this comment, because of which she frowned and stated that she no longer wanted to eat. The man said that she should not leave the bedroom until everything is finished. She replied that he was really Andre. Reget asked if the emperor acted with her the same way. She replied that this child was as persistent as he is. The longest period during which he did not let her out was a month, and she does not want this to happen. Suddenly, the man said that she would be very grateful if she had not mentioned him in his presence. The girl froze when the Archduke, with a displeased look, added that he was unpleasant from the word at all. Elizabeth completely forgot that this man is from Banella, and he is the commander-in-chief of enemy knights. Because of her stupidity, she thought that he was on her side, and now she was breaking herself for her indecration. Elizabeth shuddered barely noticeably when the man said that if he eats all the food, then he would last longer. She asked why she needed to stay at night. The Archduke replied that this was what she was talking about with confidence. After that, he kissed her hand, adding that she should withstand him, and for this, you need a healthy body. A little later, walking along the corridor, Elizabeth is cheap in the stomach, I think there. That in the end, I ate everything, as the Reget asked. His words were still echoing in her head, because he directly said that she should last at night longer. If she wants to refuse, it will be impossible. And no matter how much she said that she does not like it, it will be useless. She concluded that everything would happen tonight when Irene blocked her road, surprised at this meeting. Having greeted the princess, she added that they had not seen each other for a long time, and she was interested in how Eliza was working. A little later, sitting in the living room, Elizabeth said that she heard that she was planning to return tonight. Irene replied with a smile that it seems to her, if she remains even longer, her husband would simply tear her head off. But be that as it may, since they are now only together, she wonders if she liked her tempting proposal. Putting a cup of tea on a saucer, the girl replied that to give a clear answer, she should make some clarity. Looking into the guest's eyes, the princess directly stated that she did not trust her and absolutely does not want to accept her help. If she gives birth to a child, then Irene would send her to Argan, but it was not clear why she would take such a risk. Indeed, apparently, she is hostile to the Archduke hostile, and she does not feel affordable for her in the same way. And the Reget's receiver is the means to avoid the urgent desires of the emperor, so she cannot entrust her of the child. In response to this, Irene laughed. In response to ask what kind of stupid she begins to state once again. She gives her a chance to survive. And what is the difference? Who and how will raise a child? Because she will not concern her. Elizabeth did not agree, because if he decides on this, he is obliged to take care of everything as expected. If the child gives birth, it will remain in Rotiro longer. After that, it will not yet be too late to go back to his homeland. Hearing this, Irene's face twisted in a grimace when she asked if the princess really did not understand anything. As for the marriage with the captain of the enemy side, she can understand because she was in a difficult situation. But now she wants to leave after she gives birth and raises a child. It is not clear whether she is righteous or stupid. Or the truth is much more obvious, and she really loves him, that from the outside looks even more funny. Eliza asked herself when they gave the meaning to the relationship that came down to getting mutual benefit. Be that as it may, at the moment when she took his hand, their future seemed to be predetermined. She understands well that her actions, the feeling of the result, which she should come, is too contradictory. At that very moment, Irene said that this could not be, after which she asked what kind of love was talking about. Having grimmed, she, in addition, asked if Eliza wanted her love to bless the most beautiful woman, and she is going to raise a child and then go to the Argan, which is actually impossible. Be that as it may, by that time, Argan would no longer. Having heard these words, Elizabeth shuddered. A smile stretched out again on the guest's face when she stated that until the very end, she did not want to tell her this. Unable to withstand, she stated that the Argan would be bastard from the face of the earth. After these words, Elizabeth's heart painfully stabbed. With trembling hands, she covered her mouth, asking what she had just said, not wanting to believe her ears. Irene replied with a smile that it was difficult to believe. But, in this case, she could hear it from her husband. In the evening, Irene asked Reget, "Is there a need to kill a person only because of theft of tribute?" The man ignored her words. Then she added that it must have been quite normal for a semi-prankoon. By order, the college said that he documented everything so that she could convey this to His Majesty to the Emperor. The girl looked at the Archduke, saying that he must have killed a lot of Argan soldiers with his sword. Then she asked how such an excellent princess thought to sleep with such a man. Seeing his reaction, she asked if he wanted to kill her again, because she would regret it if she does it here and now. Turning his gaze to the drops of blood on the ground, the Reget replied that you can regret when he had already done something. A smile stretched out on the blonde's face when she specifically suggested talking about something else. Suddenly, she stated that they say that Argan's army was in the Regal, and he did not tell the princess about this. The bodies of Bellator, the Duke of Conrad were never found, but if the Emperor died, why the rest escaped? Most likely, the whole thing was that in fact, the Emperor Argan is alive and feels great. Then she asked how he thinks that the princess would feel when he finds out about it, and whether he could let her go. The smile did not fall from her face when she continued to ask questions. In the know or the princess that he was such a person? Reget asked in response. And what would change? Without even knowing that Elizabeth was standing around the corner and eavesdropping. Irene did not retreat, answering that since Eliza found out about everything, then something would change, especially for him. Hearing this, there was a surprise on the face of the Archduke when he realized that Irene began to start this conversation for a reason. Without hesitation, he grabbed her with a dragon with his hand, and the bus asked him to do this at least outside Rotiro. Trembling, but continuing to smile, Irene said that if he kills her, his wife's lies will be disclosed at the same instant. With a harsh look, the Reget answered negatively, explaining that everything will be fine until no one sees it. People, by their stupidity, believe that he will forever remain a faithful dog Banella and will not argue with anyone. And therefore, if he wants to do something, he can afford it, not paying attention to anyone. With difficulty gaining air, the blonde replied that he finally showed his true animal essence. Suddenly, the girl turned to Elizabeth, asking if she saw everything. Then the man darted to the side. He managed to see only the hem of her dress when Eliza began to run away, unable to withstand what she had just heard. Climbing the stairs, she recalled Irene's words that those who were originally had to die fled. And perhaps the whole body was that in fact, the Emperor Argan was alive, and this instilled hope in the girl. Eliza burst into tears, thinking that Andre and the Dukes, perhaps they were alive, and it turns out that she was not alone. At the same moment, Ixa came out on the stairs, with surprise discovering a sobbing princess on the steps. She began to ask why she was crying and what happened, because otherwise she could not calm her down. The girl turned to the maid, saying that she should definitely return, and it does not matter when and how, however, she was obliged. Argan has not lost this war yet, and perhaps they are desperately looking for it, and this is now the most important thing for her. Now is not the time for unnecessary feelings, such as love, and her relationship with Reget fades into the background. Therefore, all she needs is to get rid of all sorts of stupid thoughts, and she should not deceive herself. When Ivesta discovered Reget, walking in their direction, Elizabeth thought that he was not initially on her side. The man called out to her, but in response did not receive any reaction. Note that the girl was filled with tears. Suddenly, without warning, he grabbed the princess in his arms, deciding to completely take the situation into his own hands. Then, he ordered the maid not to let anyone into the bedroom without his permission, after which he went to the room. Asa, not understanding anything, accepted his order, after which she looked after them with surprise for several seconds. Without wasting time, the man put Elizabeth in bed, after which he began to passionately and gently kiss her neck. Along the way, he asked if she had forgotten that they decided to do something very important for them today. After all, he already told her that even if she wants to refuse him, she would not succeed, no matter how hard she tried. After that, the Reget began to undress, stating with a stone face that she should take it for granted. Moreover, she herself always wanted this from him, and now the moment came when it would be fulfilled. Some time ago, Irene said that he could not love and be loved because Eliza would leave him. After all, no one will ever love such a monster, from which no woman can give birth normally. From the very beginning, he never hoped that he would be worthy of love, and even never dared to dream of this. However, she will not be able to leave so easily. One feeling does not leave him from the moment he first saw her. It was not envy, admiration, or admiration. This is a dark desire for it to be only in his arms, the sense of possessiveness, which grows to infinity and still continues to increase. But, be that as it may, he also experiences fear that no one will be able to satisfy her. Kissing her forehead, the man asked, didn't she always wanted it, hinting at this moment every day. It was she who was the one who initially begged and clung to him, wanting to avoid her own death. Therefore, henceforth, he should be the only one who can become her savior, always being near her. The reddened Elizabeth felt her heart pounding and thought that she was not completely sure. Looking at the excited man, she mentally asked him if he was on her side or not. Suddenly, the Archduke went down to her feet, while the girl found and asked him to finish quickly. Then the man again hung over her, calmly saying that in this case, he can hurt her and harm her. Elizabeth replied that she was in perfect order, and the Rajhate, kissing her hand, said that she could make any sounds. Then he added that she should not resist this, since she had to prepare for this for a long time. When asked whether it hurts her, the girl answered negatively, let's explain that she feels very strange. Looking at her reddened face, the Reget said that she should get what she wanted all this time. Meanwhile, André said that he no longer dares to touch his sister, and he urgently needs to come for her. He cannot wait until the fall. Then the guy turned to the Duke of Bellator, saying that they needed to go to the north. Eliza thought that now she had a feeling that could not be expressed by any word in this world. The words of the younger brother, which she hears in her head, while she hugs the enemy's neck with both hands. Under normal circumstances, this should not have happened. But now the situation was not quite that. Reget clearly understood all the deplorable consequences that this act would bring, but could no longer stop. When he raised his head and looked up, he realized that this woman was inaccessible, so he would not let her go to the bottom. But in his life, there was no more so valuable and beautiful, except for the poor and beautiful Elizabeth. She was the true blessing of Grandel, which all the inhabitants of Argan wanted to get in one way or another. But now, no one can deny the fact that this woman from now on belongs only to Reget Kristan. A few decades ago, the day before the Reget with the dog Banella, sending himself into the hands of the Empire, a man who entered a lonely hut and found inside a corpse, next to whom a semi-Prakan child was sitting. He decided that he had to get rid of him, after which he pulled the golden cross from his bosom, stretching it in front of him. After that, he began a prayer, saying that God will arrive and will help save them life for another day. Then he thought that usually pranks attack people as soon as they were envious, but he was different from them. Then the man suggested that he had found a curiosity, after which he noticed that the boy was also interested. He noticed that the grocery did not take his eyes off the cross. Then the man asked if he wanted him. Throwing his boys, he stated that the cross is old, so this would be a gift in honor of their first meeting. Then he noticed that the guy looked like a crow, so he likes bright things, after which he offered to go with him. The man smiled slyly when he realized that he was able to interest such an unusual and young boy. Then he stated that from this moment, if he wants something, let him just show it to him, his master. If the guy will behave well, he will give him this. The midfielder carefully listened to the instructions of the elder. This was for the first time when the Rajate felt at the same time submission and greed that interested him. The maids discussed among themselves that 3 days had already passed since the doors of the bedrooms never opened. Most likely, they are trying to resolve all the accumulated grievances. These two are simply incredible in their passion. But isn't that the essence of the newlyweds, to spend as much time as possible together and enjoy each other? Ivesta, who was walking next to them, was not in solidarity with other girls, and all this time was worried about the princess. When Elizabeth opened her eyes, she was surprised to notice the Reget nearby, who read the book and smoked a cigar. Noticing that his wife woke up, The man exhaled, explaining that this cigar was made of medicinal herbs. She is not harmful to health, so if she wants, she can try. In response to this, the girl only nodded. Having made several puffs, she felt a bright taste of St. John's wort, which was very familiar to her. When she was somewhat younger, the healer explained that it was a medicinal herb called St. John's wort. If she does not sleep, she can accept it in a small amount. But if you overdo it, it can become a poison. Sometime later, the girl decided to drink the whole bottle to the bottom, thereby putting her life at risk. She returned the cigar to the man, and he said that this medicinal plant has an excellent sedative effect. Then he asked if she had relaxed now, because now she had time to take a little breath. Feeling how he strokes her cheek, the girl mentally asked if she could now hate him. After all, he is closer to her before. Perhaps everything would be different, and then events would gain a completely different character. Before Irene came to Rotiro, and before she found out that he was hiding from her news about Argan. If it were so, it would be much easier for her in her soul. But what has been done can no longer be corrected. It makes no sense to regret, because the past can no longer turn back, so she only needs to hold herself in her hands. Suddenly, the man said that it was very noticeable when she begins to think. This made Eliza blush, each time she has such an expression on her face. But, as he thought, now not the most pleasant thoughts overcome her. Then he decided to distract her a little, starting to kiss her neck, catching the girl by surprise, and forcing her to startle. She asked to wait, because he said that she was the last time, but such a request did not work. It doesn't matter how physically they were. They still remain strangers to each other, and even enemies. This has nothing to do with love. Maximum can be called these feelings with a minute attachment. The attachment that arose due to a sense of safety and gratitude, but nothing more. And despite all this, one day she will leave him, and it seems, even she will be unbearably painful from this. Half an hour later, they lay in the same bathroom, enjoying hot water in each other's arms. Taking a closer look at Elizabeth's body, Reget thought that she was a little rounded, after which he decided to check something. Using the magic, he said that perhaps this is good, because when the fruit of the pecan grows, he eats magic. But there should be some way by which it will be possible to feed the fruit in the stomach in another way. The man leaned over the sleeping girl, deciding to kiss her, but he hesitated for a while. Her body shook under him, and all of it is covered with traces. But now he hesitates before kissing. But the devil has long been past, and no longer makes sense to give the back, so he kissed Elizabeth with confidence. Suddenly, he remembered that he had heard Eliza's words that she should definitely return, and no matter when and how. If she no longer wants him, then all that remains in the end is to arouse the very desire in her again. And then there will be no trace of all these unpleasant feelings, because then it will belong only to him. A few days later, Ivesta was shocked by marks on the body of Elizabeth. Nata said that she would do everything herself. The maid said that Frey would say to bring the ointment, to which she heard the question, "Does everything really look so bad?" Ivesta gave an affirmative answer, trying to understand how she could allow something like that with herself. Deliver from thoughts, she shuddered when Ivesta said that she could talk to her, so that no one would know. However, Eliza listened to what the maid had just said, because of which she had again been said. The maid explained what was needed for it to give some medicine that can stop the pregnancy. The girl wanted to resist, but Ixa interrupted her, saying that she herself wanted to return to her homeland. However, after conception, this will be difficult to do, no matter how she wants it. So you need to do everything in advance. When the stomach begins to grow rapidly, as in this case, it is going to leave, and even more so to run into the run. Then Elizabeth seriously thought about the medicine. Remembering how Reget asked her if she wanted a child, she replied that she still wanted, but the man did not quite understand why Elizabeth answered that way. She stated that she certainly wants, because this is his child, but the Archduke interrupted her, explaining that he was common. Having lowered her head, the girl asked himself if he said to reassure her or was sincere in his words. But she still does not really know what the situation is in Argan, so she cannot start planning something in advance. At that very moment, Reget entered the room, asking Elizabeth whether she was now with the healer, but he was mistaken. With a tray in his hands and a worried look, the man asked how she feels. Looking at her marks, the girl asked not to get closer, because she herself could take care of herself, and he should not see it. The man replied that if she did not want him to see her body, then where did she get confidence all the time? Blinding and embarrassed, Elizabeth replied that when she represented it, she did not think that it would happen like this. It looked like they were animals. Grinning at the man, asked what she could still expect from the semi-prankoon. She added that this is what ends when despair eats pride, and then she was precisely in despair. Reget grabbed her leg and kissed, simultaneously asking if she was more in such despair as then. Turning around, the reddened Eliza replied that she was in such despair that she would do everything so as not to die. The man repeated her words, while the girl thought that it was impossible to show him his weakness now. She should do everything right, when suddenly she remembered Andre's voice, who stated that she could not wait until the fall. Then the girl began to wonder that if it is not just a voice from dreams, and that if Andre is really alive. Elizabeth decided to turn to her husband, ask if they can leave the castle again for some time, as before. Only this time, she would like to go a little further, in order to unwind a little and get out of the castle. Meanwhile, in Rios's castle, in the south, the guy woke up with a cry, after which he began to slowly and recover. He again could not direct magic to Eliza. Then he realized that he was definitely anything or someone was in the way. Fabian, who instantly came running to the scream, with concern in his voice, asked His Majesty if he was in order. When asked if there are no news from the bank, the old man replied that Sir Conrad is strong, so there was nothing to worry about. However, the man is worried that the emperor will be even more unhealthy if the condition does not change. Andre replied that something had already happened to his body, and he does not think that he had a lot of time left. The old man asked why he constantly says such things that the guy smiled at, and said that without Eliza, he was nothing. The wizards were not born in Argon for a long time, but this happened as if paying the imperial family for waiting. Then the twins were born with magical abilities that were more powerful than any emperor. Since the time of Galeon, such fatal weakness as they had, none of their previous predecessors. The sister was born with great magical power, but could not create magic circles, no matter how she tried. And his brother developed the ability to draw them, but only the inherent forces to magic were deprived, like a shell and a core. The shell absorbing the fragile essence of the nucleus became stronger over the years, and with the nucleus, everything was the other way around. Without any opportunity to protect yourself, there was nothing left but to be drunk to the bottom. And at the age of 15, when a sister, who could not come to terms with poor health, tried to commit suicide, Andre for several months tried to find a way to help her, and the decision came to him spontaneously. Then he decided to apply magic circles to her body, but she will have to suffer a little pain. Elizabeth asked what kind of magic it was, to which she received an answer, that she would separate her from him, and she should become easier. Soon, my sister no longer worsened health, and magical power did not disappear, and it became healthier than before. But Andre, who was nicknamed the Archmage as a result, he stopped aging, which is why he found new envious people. At the same time, the actions of his magic, which defended Argon, began to fade one after another, exposing the empire. As a result, the barbarians made their way to the Argon, because of which they arranged the largest commotion, destroying the empire. Looking at his hand, the guy said that he was constantly preventing him from contacting her soul. Then he squeezed his hand into his fist, saying that he had to return his sister, still alive, and so far it is generally feasible, because he must give Elizabeth everything that he has, and only for this moment he is obliged to survive. Even if the shell disappears, the core will remain. The same applies to their close connection, like a brother and sisters. But to say more precisely, only when the shell disappears, this is the only way the core can become more solid and strong. Meanwhile, Elizabeth, riding a horse, asked her not to rush, saying that Chernish is very obedient. She then stated that the animal is better than people. Such a statement made Reget find out her thoughts in more detail. The girl explained that if you ask them to stop, they stop. The same applies to the rest of the teams. They do not confuse you like other people, because of which it can be concluded that animals are two beautiful creatures. Suddenly, the man leaned slightly closer to the girl, asking if she pouted because of something in the morning. Elizabeth remembered how at night she saw a dream in which Fabian led a dialogue with Andre about the news from Banon. She looked at them from the side and tried to shout, but they simply did not pay attention to her. And before she had time to open her eyes, she saw the silhouette of the Reget, who was again with her during such a dream. At that very moment, the girl shuddered sharply, trying to explain that she needed to sleep a little more. And now she thought that it was definitely not a dream, but she never managed to listen to that conversation to the end. Oddly enough, the Erzduke interferes every time Andre dreams of, and this was not the first time for her. She furtively looked at him, suggesting that perhaps he knew something, and specially behaves like that. That same evening, Elizabeth suggested that Reget intentionally tried to intervene in their connection with Andre. And then how many times they have repeated. She suggested that he was specifically trying to distract her from his brother. As if sensing her thoughts, a man approached her behind, hugging her by the waist and asking what she thought about. He put her on the table, and Eliza suggested that a riot had returned to him because he often wants to do this.